to speak a little fast. So
And then for the chat, if we have a very lively chat, maybe we can read some of the messages so that we can just speak and everyone is able to listen.
Perfect.
If by any chance you are going too fast and we're having a difficult time catching up, we're going to turn on our camera and just do like this, like stretch, stretch, so that you remember to breathe and stretch your words, okay?
Do we know if we have any Spanish speakers attending?
Allison said
yes, we do. We have about 4 to 5 that have requested interpretation.
Okay. Are we going to double check that they've actually signed in before we start?
I mean, I
see one person with the name of Conchita, which I will assume that will speak Spanish, but
okay,
we can't be sure.
Great.
We'll give it about 1 more minute before we can go ahead and hit the green light to start, and then people will slowly kind of come in as they would like. All right, Jenny, go ahead and we should be good to go.
All right. All right. Well, hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining Developmental Pathways Virtual Transition Workshop. My name is Jenny Skinner, and I'm an Associate Director in the Case Management Department here at Developmental Pathways. I'd like to start off by introducing a couple of important guests who will be interpreting for some of our Spanish-speaking participants. So let me hand it over to Andrea and Luis.
Perfect, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Luis Gomez. I'm here with the Community Language Cooperative as a Spanish interpreter. Joining me this morning is my colleague, Andrea. And we are here to establish language justice in this space by using a simultaneous interpretation feature through Zoom. Once we turn it on, you'll see a small globe appear on the bottom right hand of your screen if you're joining us through a computer this morning. If today you're joining with a cell phone or a tablet, you can find the 3 dots options where it says more. And from there, you can find the interpretation feature and select if you wish to participate in English or in Spanish. This allows everyone to be able to communicate, ask questions, participate, listen, all in the same way, and to be able to do so in the language of our heart, the language that we speak with our families. Muy buenos días, mi nombre es Luis Gómez, estoy aquí con la Cooperativa Comunitaria de Lenguaje como intérprete de español. Esta mañana suena mi colega Andrea y vamos a establecer justicia lingüística en este espacio utilizando una función de interpretación simultánea por Zoom. Ya que la activemos, verán un pequeño globo terráqueo aparecer en la parte de la derecha debajo de su pantalla si se une con una computadora. Si esta mañana está utilizando un celular o alguna tableta, puede seleccionar los 3 puntos donde dice más y ahí podrá encontrar la función de interpretación para seleccionar si desea participar en inglés o en español, para todos poder escuchar, hacer preguntas, participar, hablar, todos de la misma manera y poder hacerlo en un idioma de nuestro corazón, el que hablamos con nuestras familias. Si en cualquier momento durante la reunión tiene alguna pregunta o algún problema, nos podemos comunicar a través del chat. Ahorita vamos a activar la función de interpretación, verificaremos que ambos canales funcionen y estaremos listos. If at any point throughout the meeting you have any issues or any questions, we can communicate via the chat. We will now turn on the interpretation feature. We will test that both channels are working and we will be all set. Any questions, algunas preguntas antes de comenzar before we get started? Okay, we can turn on interpretation and we'll be all ready to go. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Andrea and Luis. All right, today you're going to learn information that will empower individuals, families, caregivers, and education professionals about the transition into adult services. This is a webinar style presentation, so all presenters will be seen and heard. However, everyone else will automatically have cameras off and will be muted. Each presentation will have a Q&A afterwards, and our team member, Andrea Morales, will help facilitate those questions. Oh,
I am so sorry. The interpretation has not been turned on yet. We need to turn on the interpretation and then we need to double check. Do you hear me in English? Do you hear me in Spanish? And then we can continue. If Allison, who is the host, could please turn on the interpretation feature. At the bottom of your screen, you should see a world map and then you should click it and it says manage interpretation.
Thank you everyone for your patience. Here we go.
Are we?
Is it good, Andrea?
All right. Can we get started? Okay. Do you want me to read? I'll redo. Should I do that? All right. Will do. Thank you everyone for your patience. But we really want to make sure everyone is able to understand what we're saying today. So let me go through that again. Today, you're going to learn information that will empower individuals, families, caregivers, and education professionals about the transition into adult services. And this is a webinar style presentation, so all presenters will be seen and heard. However, everyone else will automatically have cameras off and are muted. Each presentation will have a Q&A afterwards, and our team member, Andrea Dre Morales, will help facilitate those questions. Please feel free to drop your questions in the little Q&A icon that you see on your screen. And we'll be gathering all those questions during each presentation and help address them as best we can at the end of each of those presentations. Parent panel will conclude our workshop today. This is a great opportunity to ask questions and get insight from parents themselves. So look forward to that at the end of our presentations today. We also want to remind you that this transition workshop will be recorded, and all of our presentations and a copy of the slides and our handouts will be sent out to everyone with the email that was used to register. If you have any questions or concerns, you're welcome to drop that in the chat box, the Q&A box, or text 720-705-6509. Again, that number is 720-705-6509, or email us at coevents@dpcolo.org. And lastly, we want to let you know there's an opportunity to win a door prize. Yay, who doesn't like winning prizes? If you want to be entered for a chance to win a prize, please use the link to fill out that form that Dre will be posting in the chat box. The more sessions you attend, the more chances you'll have to win a prize. And we will announce those winners on Monday, May 3rd, and a member of our community engagement team will reach out to you to get that prize to you. All right, let's get things started. Our first presenter today is Amy Heller. Amy Heller is our benefits program manager here at Developmental Pathways. She will be reviewing SSI, SSDI, and Medicaid benefits. Fun fact about Amy, Amy has fostered over 25 cats and kittens. And if you're lucky enough to be in meetings with Amy, you might get to see some of those cute cats walking by the screen, which I thoroughly enjoy. So let me hand it over to Amy. Take it away.
Thanks, Jenny. That was the best introduction I've ever received. That was great. Thanks. Welcome, everybody. I'm so glad you're here. This is a very content-heavy presentation, and part of the reason for that is there's a lot of information in regard to Medicaid and Social Security. The other is that you're going to get a copy of this presentation, and I wanted you to have as much information as possible within the actual slides. You may have a lot of questions. I may answer them throughout. So my hope is that you'll maybe hold on to your questions till we get closer to the end, and then feel free to throw those in the Q&A chat box if I did not address the questions. So no one expects you to be an expert in Medicaid or Social Security. What I hope you'll get from this is a really good understanding of the resources that Developmental Pathways has available to you, guides and such, and things that you can refer back to later on when you're going through this process. So these are the main things we're going to cover for Medicaid, and then Social Security, we have a list as well. So next slide, please. So this is a benefits pyramid. Wanted to show you that Medicaid state plans is at the bottom. And then all the way at the top are the Hcbs waivers, which is what an SLS waiver is, CES, CHIRP, DD waiver, all the different waivers that Developmental Pathways helps with are at the top. And so when you get a waiver, you have both state plan benefits, so everything that comes with regular Medicaid, in addition to the waiver benefits. Next slide. Wanted to tell you that we have a guide available of how to apply for Medicaid. We have one for adults and we have one for children. There are various sections in the guide. It gives you options for applying, helpful Medicaid links, application assistance information, where can you go in the community to seek assistance with the applications. There are some places that will help in both English and Spanish. A page-by-page guide through the application literally takes you page by page, question by question. How to submit trusts if you have a trust, contact information for Health First Colorado, and then a final checklist to make sure that you've done all the pieces. We do have a shorter application that we give people to complete. It may look different if you go on to the Peak site. It may also look different if you just go on to the Medicaid site and print out an application. The one that we're giving you is on there, but they also have a different application. The one we give you allows you to apply for multiple programs at once. If you want to apply for food assistance, at the same time that you're applying for Medicaid, this application gives you that option. Next slide, please. So a lot of people ask, when do I apply? When do I get started? And I believe that this is where there's a lot of anxiety around when to, how to, and am I doing it right? And so really you can apply for Medicaid for your adult loved one, for a child who has a disability at any time. Just keep in mind that if you're applying for someone who's under the age of 18, they are going to look at the family's income and assets. So the parents in the household, all the adults, plus those kids, they're going to look at everybody's income and assets. If you apply for someone who's over the age of 18, it gets a little tricky with whether or not they look at the parents' income and assets. If the parents declare that adult individual on their taxes as a dependent, then they will look at the parents' income. They will not look at their assets and resources, only their income. And then if that person files their own taxes as an adult, or they don't get filed in any way, shape, or form, then only their income assets will be considered. I don't expect you to memorize this. We refer everybody to Colorado Access Medical Enrollment Services, called AIMS. You'll hear AIMS used a lot. We highly recommend that when people are applying for Medicaid, especially for the first time, that they utilize their services. They can walk you through qualifications, they give you one-on-one support, and we'll be able to tell you all of these pieces that I just went over. Next slide, please. So when you go to apply, you need to choose how you're going to do it, and you should only do it one way. You're either going to get help from an application assistance site or an eligibility application partner. They're AIMS, the ones that I just mentioned before. They are really, really wonderful. Their services are in Spanish and English, and they do help step-by-step through applications. They have two asks. One is that you schedule an appointment with them. They're not doing any in-person appointments during the public health emergency, but scheduling an appointment is always helpful. And then to fill out as much as you can of the applications prior to your meeting. So go through the applications, do what you can with the guides that we can provide, and then go through the rest with somebody at AIMS. You can also fill out paper applications that we can mail to you, and then submit those to your local Department of Human Services. And then you can go on the Colorado Peak site. A lot of people like to use this. Medicaid loves when people use the Colorado Peak site. They really try to point people in that direction. It's a little bit limiting when it comes to if you're trying to apply for certain kinds of Medicaid. Both long-term care Medicaid, which is waiver Medicaid, and we're going to talk more about this in just a little bit. Both require that, as well as the buy-in program, both require that people have a disability determination. And we're about to go into the different ways to get that. But if you choose to do a Medicaid disability application and not apply for Social Security, you can't do that on the Peak site. You're going to have to submit that to your local Department of Human Services. So we go back and forth on whether or not using Peak is the best option when someone wants long-term care Medicaid, but it's definitely an option out there. If you do apply on Peak, be sure to check the question yes, that the person needs supports with activities of daily living. That will actually prompt Medicaid to send the disability application to you in the mail. Next slide, please. So what does the benefits team do? I'm the benefits program manager. I have 4 wonderful people that work under me, for me, with me. They're really fabulous, and we will help determine which applications you need to complete. We will provide those applications to you. So after you go through intake tells us all about you. We determine those applications. We email them to you along with guides and lots of information. And we'll even answer questions if we can about those Medicaid applications and connect you with resources, places where you can go, who you can talk to really get that one-on-one support that I know a lot of people want. We do suggest that if you have intricate Medicaid questions that you go directly to Medicaid. They are the experts, and they are going to be able to answer them better than my team can. Next slide. Different types of Medicaid. There are actually over 40 types of Medicaid. We only hear about a couple of them. One of them is MAGI, Modified Adjusted Gross Income. When you think of someone having just regular state plan Medicaid, that's what that is. It is based on income. At a later date, when you get this presentation, feel free to click on the income chart for 2021, and it will show you what your income has to be in order to qualify. Health First Colorado buy-in Medicaid programs is a fabulous option for people who don't qualify financially for MAGI. It allows you to pay for the buy-in, pay for Medicaid coverage when you wouldn't normally qualify. And so there's an income chart for children and an income chart for adults. And don't forget adults, and don't forget the income chart for children does take into account parent income as well. And so feel free to look at that at a future time when you get this presentation. This is a great option. A lot of people end up getting onto Medicaid buy-in, come through our intake line and our program, and then we switch them over with Medicaid to long-term care Medicaid. It really helps us out if you have Medicaid ahead of time. When you come through intake, it will be a faster process, but we understand that not everybody qualifies, and you'd rather wait until you're getting more assistance from my team. And that's totally understandable. But if you want to explore your options, those are available. During the public health emergency, they are not collecting premiums for Medicaid buy-in, and they will not back charge either. I get that question a lot. So once a public health emergency is over, if you've been on buy-in, they will not ask you to pay them back. Next slide, please. So long-term care Medicaid, what the heck is it, right? It is waiver Medicaid. It is what enables you to get on to, say, the SLS waiver, CES, CHIRP, and other long-term care waivers. There are very strict financial requirements. You can't have more than $2,000 in assets. That's all of the money combined for that individual. So they're just looking at that person who wants to get onto the waiver services. How much money do they have? And then how much money are they earning? And that is a combined amount of work income, so earned income, unearned income, which would be Social Security benefits. You can't have more than $23.82 if you're not working. Of course, with Medicaid, there's always something that's a little bit more complicated. And so working adults have a little bit more flexibility. They can actually be on buy-in Medicaid with the waiver. And then that enables them to not have any limit on how much money they have, but they still have a limit to how much they're earning. And on a future slide, there is a link to the buy-in information about the income limits. There's also a disability component for long-term care Medicaid. You have to be determined to have a disability according to what the Social Security Administration says is a disability. This is not to be confused with the original determination that you'll go through for the intake with the intake team. The intake team will send you an application to fill out, which they'll talk about as well. And they will do a disability determination to make sure you meet the state's definition of what a disability is. And then later on, when you're applying for Medicaid, you'll need to then go through a different disability process to show that you qualify according to what Social Security says is a disability. Just try to make sure that you're staying on your game. And I know it's very, very confusing. So apologize for the same terminology. And then the third one is the functional eligibility. You'll be doing a level of care assessment, which our intake team will be talking about today. And so you have to meet all three of those qualifications in order to qualify for long-term care Medicaid. Next slide. All right, so again, those financial eligibility pieces are very, very important when it comes to qualifying for long-term care Medicaid. Again, that $2,000 is everything combined. Really important to note that if a person has a 529 college savings account, at the time that they turn 18, that becomes a countable resource in the eyes of Medicaid. So up until they're 18, it's fine. They can have whatever in there. But once they turn 18, it is a countable resource. Doesn't mean you have to just dispose of it and spend all the money, but we do suggest that you look into opening a Colorado ABLE account or an ABLE account you can open in another state, which however you want to do it, and then opening that account and seeing if you can transfer the money from the 529 college savings account into the ABLE account. While you're preparing for this transition period, a really good time is to start thinking about what am I going to do with the money that I have if a person has excess of $2,000. We don't necessarily feel like you have to just spend it down and to get things you don't really need. And so think about opening an ABLE account, think about opening a trust, places that you can put that money and have it sheltered in a way that Medicaid will consider it to not be a countable asset. And then again, that total income, where that number comes from, the 2382, is it's 3 times the maximum SSI amount for the year. And for 2021, that is $794. So 3 times 794 is 2382. So whenever SSI goes up, that amount goes up as well. Next slide, please. All right, so again, think about where you can shelter those assets. There are different kinds of trusts. There's a pool trust, special needs trust. ABLE accounts are great. Up until yesterday, they had a fabulous promotion. They were offering $50 if you opened an account in April. Hopefully people got that information forwarded to them, or you saw it in the fabulous community outreach, community engagement newsletter. But ABLE accounts are a really great way to shelter money. And if you'd like to compare ABLE accounts, special needs trusts, and pool trusts, there is a fabulous link on this document that you can go to. It's many, many pages, but really interesting information. Next slide, please. All right, and I have to say one thing. When you're doing a presentation in this style, all I see is myself. So I feel like I am giving all this information to myself. So I appreciate that there are people out there listening. So thank you. This is a very bizarre way to do a presentation. All right. So I want to talk a little bit about adults who work versus adults who don't. This is not in any way to say you need to run out quickly and get a job. I just want people to know this option, that it's a little bit easier, so to speak, to qualify for Medicaid when you are working, whether that's an hour a month, 10 hours a month, whatever it is, because it does give you that option of being on the Medicaid buy-in program with a waiver. The DD waiver is a waiver that we also assist with, and it does not participate in this way. Our only adult waiver that we help with that does is the SLS waiver. However, there are 5 waivers altogether. An example would be the EBD waiver, elderly, blind, disabled, and then the mental health waiver. So several other waivers that do participate with buy-in at the same time. But this chart gives you a reference to see the difference between a working adult who's just on long-term care Medicaid and then a non-working adult who, it's early in the morning for me. A working adult who, what the income limit and asset limit would be for them versus a non-working adult. So again, you'll have a chance to review this chart in full when this presentation is sent out. Next slide, please. More information. I don't mean to push so much about Medicaid buy-in. I was just so thrilled when a couple of years ago this opened up to waivers, because we have a lot of adults who want to work, which is fantastic. Medicaid wants people to work. Social Security really encourages people to work. It's just finding a balance between what you're doing, working, how much you're earning, and your Medicaid waivers at the same time. So this, we have a great guide that is chock full of information. If there's one thing about my team, we've got lots and lots of guides that are always available to people. You just need to ask your coordinator or case manager. We'll be happy to send it your way. But this slide has some more information about Medicaid buy-in and links to the government site with more information. Next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit about the disability requirement. There are 2 paths that you can take, and we highly recommend, if you want to access services as close to 18 as possible, you're anxious to get started, you don't have Social Security yet, then we suggest you fill out a Medicaid disability application on top of your Medicaid application. So you're filling out 2 applications. That Medicaid disability application goes to Medicaid. They forward it to Arbor, or called ARG. They are the company that is contracted with the state of Colorado to review a Medicaid disability application. They do use the same definition that Social Security uses. It can take about up to 90 days for them to make a determination. A lot of that is dependent on how thoroughly you fill out the application and whether or not you submit supporting documentation with that application, which is highly recommended. Again, there's a guide for this, and we do also even list out suggested supporting documentation to include. The other route is going and applying for Social Security. And if you're approved for SSI, you automatically qualify for Medicaid. So a lot of people prefer to go that route because they know when they're approved, or if approved, that they'll get Medicaid without having to fill out a separate Medicaid application. The reasons that we recommend going the route of Medicaid disability application and Medicaid and then applying for Social Security is because of what I mentioned before. It will enable you to access waiver supports more quickly. The review process for Social Security can take about 4 to 6 months on average. I know that there's a myth out there that everyone's denied their first time when they apply for Social Security. That is not the case. Yes, a lot of people are denied. I believe they're denied because it's a very complicated process, and if you miss a step or just don't do something completely right or correctly, then you could be denied. And so, in my opinion, as if you follow the guide, or I hope that if you follow the guide that we have available, that there will be less likely areas where you're going to misstep and that you may be approved. The other possibility is that, it's a very strict process when they're reviewing it on the disability side. And so unless you've provided really strong supporting documentation to explain this person's disability and how it affects them from day to day, then they may not get a full sense and may not approve. But if you are denied, we do suggest that you appeal and go through that process. And so the third way that this is a benefit, if you do the Medicaid disability application and Medicaid application together and then apply for Social Security, is that if you do get denied, if you're in services with us, you can stay in services while you appeal the denial from Social Security. So the difference is that if you just decide to apply for Social Security and then get denied, that's going to delay when you can access services. You won't be able to access them until you have completed the appeal cycle and if you are approved. So lots of information there. I recognize, again, when you come through intake and then go to my team, we explain all these things and we provide the options to you. Next slide, please. So lots of helpful links for you to refer back to, getting to the PEAK site, a complete list of your county offices. You can do searches for application assistance sites. If you want to look at the flyer that we created that has one side applying for Medicaid, the other side is maintaining Medicaid. It's a really fabulous double-sided flyer. And then the phone number and contact information for Colorado Access AIMS. Next slide, please. All right. So again, ask your coordinator, ask your case manager for a guide to applying for Medicaid. We have one for adults and children, and then the disability application guide is for both children and adults. Next slide. All right, we made it to Social Security. That was a lot of information. Let's take a deep breath and go on to Social Security. So when you apply for Social Security, there are two applications. You're doing a disability report and you're filling out an SSI application. Both of them can be completed online, and which is new within the last couple of years. So really convenient. Next slide. All similar to Medicaid, people ask, when should I apply for Social Security? You can apply for Social Security for your loved one at any time, but they will look at parent income and assets. So that is taken into consideration. So a lot of people don't apply until they're 18. Please keep in mind, and this is super, 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 super important. Social Security does not consider someone 18 until they've been 18 for a full calendar month. So if you apply for the person on their 18th birthday, they're going to still look at them as a child. So really, really important that you wait until they've been 18 for a month. So for example, if the person's birthday is April 20th, apply mid-May. If their birthday is April 3rd, apply at the beginning of May. But they must cross over to that full month in order for them to be considered an adult. And if you're already receiving SSI as an individual, because your family qualifies, which is very common as well, you will need to go through a process between your 18th year and your 19th year to qualify as an adult. Social Security should send you an application to complete so you can then requalify now as an adult. You can also at any time call Social Security, ask some questions about when it's appropriate for you to apply, depending on your situation. And there are other ones listed on here as well. Next slide, please. All right. So similar to Medicaid, you have different options of ways to apply. As I said before, you can apply online. You can do that at your leisure. You can log in. You can go back in after, if you have to go look up information. So it's really a nice flexible way to apply. You can schedule an in-person appointment when the PHE is over. So during the public health emergency, the offices are closed, but you can schedule a phone interview, and you can do that by calling your local Social Security office or calling the main 800 number, excuse me, and they can help you through the applications. Really important to note that when you schedule an appointment, they only give you 90 minutes, which is really not enough time to fill out both applications if you're trying to do them start to finish with that person. So just like Medicaid, if you're seeking the supports of an outside resource, fill out as much of the application as you can, and then go to your meeting and fill out the rest. Social Security does not accept paper applications just dropped off at their office, whether it's a public health emergency or not. That is just something that they don't accept, which is different from Medicaid that does. And then if you've applied and you want to check your status, we highly suggest that you create a My Social Security account. Everyone should have a My Social Security account. I have one. I can go in there and see how much I would get if I were to retire at my age. Very depressing, and obviously can't retire yet. But really interesting way to check on things. You can also update your address on a My Social Security account. So lots of benefits, a whole list of them. But one of them is to check the status of your application if you've applied. Even if you applied over the phone, you can still check online to see what the status is. Next slide, please. Okay, so as I said before, we love our guides. So there is a guide for Social Security. It has an application checklist, a place to write down your reentry number if you apply online. They will give you a number to be able to input to get back into your application. You need to write that down. Social Security will not be able to look that up for you. And so if you do go that route online, write down the reentry number. If you lose the reentry number, you can create a My Social Security account and get into your application that way. Those are the only two options to get back into your online application. So the guide has when to apply for benefits. It has more in-depth information about the steps of the process, important terms and acronyms, a list of suggested supporting documents, lots of tips and tricks. Read that section thoroughly. It really gives some great tips and tricks to applying, links to important forms, and then the contact information for Social Security. Above and beyond just the main number, it gives the addresses of the local offices and their local phone numbers. The local phone numbers you cannot find online, and so it's a really great resource. We suggest you keep everything organized in a folder, you do some prep before you start, and keep all your papers organized. So again, ask your coordinator for a copy. And then we also have a guide if you do get denied, we have a guide about the appeal process. Next slide, please. So there are 4 main steps of the Social Security application process. This is not something Social Security says. I made this up to try to help you to organize the different pieces of the process. So definitely prepare, gather documents. Just like if you're going to file taxes, you gather your documents and do some prep work. You then are going to figure out how you're going to apply and when. Go through the application process, and then follow up. The follow-up is key. You should get a letter within about a month of your application from an organization called DDS, Disability Determination Services. They are contracted by Social Security to review the disability application for Social Security. So similar to Medicaid, it goes to an organization called ARBOR, or ARG, Social Security disability application goes to DDS. So they're going to have a disability examiner who is going to pour through your entire application and review everything. You'll get a letter with their name and phone number. This is so important. Call them. Call them to make sure they got any supporting documentation you may have given to Social Security. Call them to ask them if they need anything else. Do they need more supporting documentation? Do they need help getting it from your doctor's offices? Because they'll send a request out to everybody that you list in the application. So work with them closely to make sure they get what they need. It's really unfortunate unfortunate when people are denied because DDS didn't get the supporting documents that they needed. So an example would be they sent out requests to doctors' offices and then they never heard back. And so we want you to make sure that you're helping in that process so you don't get denied because of that. And then once they make a determination, if they say that you qualify, you'll need to set up an account where that money is going to go. Social Security does require either a direct deposit into an account, or they have a debit card that you can sign up for and have the money go on that card. And then you also need to determine if a rep payee is needed. If a rep payee is needed, and most often it's a parent or a good family friend, then you apply for that through Social Security. They do a short little interview to make sure you understand the responsibilities, and then get you set up to be the rep payee and tell you everything that you're going to have to do. I should say, pause here for a second and tell you the Social Security website is very user-friendly, and there's a lot of information on there about rep payees and what the responsibilities are if you'd like to check that out. Next slide, please. Really heavy content, heavy slide here. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I want to give you some options of outside resources. So I, every year, twice a year, help the ARC of Arapahoe Douglas with their Step Up program. Fantastic program. If you haven't signed up for it yet, highly suggest you look into it. Really great program for people going through the transition period. And then I do a presentation about applying for Social Security. That's much more in depth. There is a recording of the last one that I did on here. It's the first link. Feel free to watch it. And then Easter Seals has a disability benefit services program where they actually have webinars that you can sign up for to learn about the Social Security application process. Obviously, Series 1, you're a little late for that, but that Series 2 is going to be starting soon, and they have very reasonable rates for those webinars. So highly recommend them. That's where they are the ones who taught me about the Social Security application process. They're super knowledgeable, wonderful, and very thorough. So highly recommend that as a resource. Next slide, please. Last tidbit of info. Where we see the biggest problems is that people are not signing their applications properly. And so if the individual who wants waiver services or wants Medicaid or is applying for Social Security is their own legal guardian, they need to sign the applications. If they're not able to physically sign, they need to somehow make a mark if they can, or if you're a legal guardian for that individual, you'll need to submit a copy of the legal guardianship paperwork with the application. And so if you have gone through that guardianship process and the person's over 18, then parents can sign. They just need to submit that guardianship paperwork. And then the other thing that we see a lot is that people don't submit all of the pages of the application. So make sure, double check, go back through it. They are numbered, the pages, so make sure you have all the pages there. And then make sure that for the Medicaid disability application in particular, that you're submitting that release of information page. It is super important. Arbor will not be able to go through the application and do what they need to do if they don't get that. They'll reject it and submit it back to Medicaid, and it delays the process by a lot. Our guide also points this out as a big reminder, and it is part of the disability application packet. So just make sure you're submitting that back. All right. Next slide, please. So questions. I'm looking at my notes now and I see all kinds of things that I missed. But I think what I want to do here, because it is so much information, is I do want to pause for a moment and see if there are any questions. I did see things popping up in the Q&A. So.
Hey, Amy.
Yes.
It is Dre. First question that came in the chat was, do we reapply at 18 if they are already on Medicaid with CES?
Great question, and I meant to talk about that. You do not. No, 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 no. If you are on the CES waiver and you're going through the process of going onto an adult waiver, you don't need to reapply. We do check, my team checks to make sure that, see if you've done a disability application in the past and if that's still valid. And if it's not, then or it's coming up to an expiration date, we'll send out a disability application to you, or your case manager will, to fill out. But no, you do not need to reapply for Medicaid when you're going from CES to an adult waiver. Great question.
Awesome. There's another question from Jill asking, how are you different from the resource exchange?
So the resource exchange, I believe, is another community center board. Can someone correct me?
Yes,
Yeah.
Amy, I was going to say I could tackle that too. So Developmental Pathways is a community center board in the state of Colorado, and there are 20 CCBs, centered boards, in the state of Colorado, all designated to serve individuals with developmental disabilities or delays. So the resource exchange is another CCB that serves Colorado Springs. Developmental Pathways catchment area, each CCB has a catchment area. We serve Arapahoe County, Douglas County, and the city of Aurora. So we are like the resource exchange, but we have a different service area. So that helps.
Thank you. Another question is, if I am carrying our 18-year-old on private health coverage through my employer, should he apply for Medicaid?
So it is totally individual as to whether or not you want to do that. But if you want waiver services, then you're going to need to apply for Medicaid for that adult individual. Whether or not you keep the private health insurance is totally up to you. I should tell you that Medicaid likes to be the payer of last resort. So they really encourage and want people to keep their private health insurance for their medical needs and then to access waiver supports through the Medicaid. They have a wonderful program, not to be confused with buy-in, but it also has the word buy-in in it. It's called the Hibi program, Health Insurance Buy-in. And if you apply for that, they will determine whether or not it makes sense for Medicaid to help cover parts or all of your private health insurance premium for that adult. And so really great opportunity to hold on to your private health insurance for that person, but also get some financial support to pay for it. So you just need to go through that application process to see if the person qualifies. Hope that answers the question.
Next question is, AIMS is the place you recommended for an advocate to help us. Step X step with Medicaid, correct? Do they help with SSI as well?
So AIMS, yes, they are an organization that will help with your Medicaid applications. They do not help with Social Security applications. In fact, there are very few places that will help with Social Security applications. So few that I don't really even have one to mention today. However, the guide does provide a list. But that one, actually, that's not true. I lied. The one that I mentioned before, Easter Seals, they will provide some support as well as the webinars. But no, AIMS does not help with the Social Security application. Any other questions?
Got it. Sorry, thanks. I was trying to put in a CCB for local different regions.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Can you direct deposit your SSI into an ABLE account?
That is a good question. And I feel like I know the answer, but I'm not feeling very confident about it. I am not sure. That question would have to be asked with the ABLE folks. I'm sorry, and I can look it up and find out, but I am not 100% sure. The thing with SSI is that they assume you're using the money right away because you have a need for it, for housing, expenses, food, shelter, clothing. And so most people who get their SSI, that money is used very quickly. By putting it into an ABLE account, it's just going to come right out. So I'm not quite sure about that. I apologize for not knowing. I can tell you though with SSDI, if the person's getting SSDI, that can go into your ABLE account.
Next question is, before applying for Medicaid, special needs trust needs to be approved by the county? I live in Denver, so where should I apply?
Yeah, so if the person has a trust, every trust the person is connected to, whether it's a family trust and that individual is only mentioned in the trust, it still needs to go to the state of Colorado to be reviewed fully. Depending on the kind of trust, it could take anywhere between a month to maybe 3-4 months. So we do suggest you submit that early on. If you're applying for Medicaid for the first time, you can submit the full trust with the Medicaid application. And then whether it's to Ames or your county office, they will forward that to Healthcare Policy and Financing, which we refer to as HCPF. So the Medicaid office can forward the trust to HCPF to review for you. We also have in a guide a way to submit it yourself. You can actually submit it directly to HCPF if you'd like to. If you had an attorney who helped you with the trust, they should know how to submit that to Medicaid and should be able to do that for you as well. So if you live in Denver County, and I don't see if this person actually has Medicaid or not. Let me try to find that question again here. So you don't need to do the trust before you apply for Medicaid, but do submit it with your Medicaid application. So if you live in Denver, you can submit it to the Denver Department of Human Services. You could submit it to Ames with your Medicaid application, or you could submit it directly to HCPF.
Last question, Amy, is we filled out Medicaid application this past week. I received in the mail with no letter a Health First Colorado insurance card for her 20-year-old. Does this mean that they've been approved?
That's a great question. And wow, what a quick turnaround, right? So I don't know what that means. Here's what I suggest. I suggest you call wherever you applied. If you applied online, call your local Department of Human Services, whatever county you live in. If you applied with Ames, call them and inquire as to why you got the health insurance card and whether or not this person has been approved. If you haven't already created a login for Colorado Peak, I would go onto the Colorado Peak site, and then you can browse through there to see what this person has been approved for. So my guess is you wouldn't have gotten a card if they didn't get approved, but you don't know what kind of Medicaid they were approved for. So you'll want to do some more investigative work.
Another question came in. If you are on the family support waiver, do you need to reapply for Medicaid when turning 18?
Yeah, so I want to just make sure we're all using the same language because it can get really, really confusing. When you're getting family support services, it is not a waiver. It is not a Medicaid waiver. It's not through Medicaid at all. It is, and I'll let Jenny jump in a second, but it's a support program. And so, yes, if you don't have Medicaid yet and you're receiving family support services and you would like to access a Medicaid waiver, such as SLS, then yes, you need to apply for Medicaid. And Jenny, is there anything else you want to say about family support?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Yes, the terminology can get confusing. The Family Support Services Program is actually a state-funded program that we manage at Developmental Pathways. So income is, don't verify income for that program. It's not based on income. So there's no Medicaid attached to the Family Support Services Program. So you would, as Amy said, you would have to apply when you want to access the Adult Services Waiver.
Any other questions? I know it's a lot of information to take in. And so I know sometimes questions come back later on. I see more questions popping up.
3 more. Can you see those? One
I can.
Karen. Okay, go for it.
Yeah. So I've been trying to get my now 28-year-old son who's on the spectrum to qualify for services, who's denied 2 times for Social Security. What would be the next best steps? Should we fill out an application for both Medicaid and SSI? His school district did not convey any of this information that we had an IEP. I'm really sorry to hear that. And it is so frustrating to apply for Social Security and get denied, especially twice. I guess my question would be for you is whether or not your son is considered high functioning. And so if so, I'm wondering if when you're filling out the Social Security application and providing supporting documentation, that it's not necessarily explaining what he struggles with. And this is just, I don't know. I'm not seeing the application to be able to say for sure. But what I suggest you do at this point is fill out a Medicaid disability application and go through that channel and see if he can get approved and fill out a Medicaid application. And that way we can hopefully get him into services. And then you can go back later on to trying the Social Security route again. So I would definitely do the Medicaid disability application. Does a tax refund go towards income? It does not. It is not counted as income, and neither are the stimulus money that people have been getting during the public health emergency. That is not counted against people as far as income is concerned. What you do need to do, though, is dispose in some way of the money within a year, which means that you're either spending it down, you're sheltering it into an ABLE account or a trust. So within that year's time for it not to qualify, for it not to count. All right, I filled out an adult buy-in application in February and sent it to ARG for my son who previously been on buy-in but turns 19. So my question is for this person, and maybe you can answer, was this a reapplication because he had been approved through a disability application and then his diary date expired? Because I'm not sure how to answer that without knowing that piece. And we will take a quick potty break in just a minute. How do we prove our son's disability? We have his original diagnosis from 13 years ago. They definitely want to see that and as current information as you can provide. So within the last couple of years, any testing that the person has had, and that's true for the Medicaid disability application and the Social Security application. The guide goes into some other suggestions, such as asking if they're still in school or were just in school not too long ago, for teachers to write letters, doctors, therapists. You want to focus on that person's hardest days. It is not a time to focus on their strengths. It can be very upsetting to think about some of the struggles, but really important if you're applying to be qualifying for disability that you are focusing on those struggles. So the buy-in question was, she was told that he has to apply as an adult for adult buy-in. Okay, so he must have been on child's buy-in and now they're requalifying as adult buy-in. I'm not actually very familiar with that and having to reapply. I apologize. It sounds like he had to requalify. You filled out a new Medicaid application, but not a new disability application. So they're looking at whether or not he now qualifies financially as an adult for buy-in. I would call Colorado Medical Assistance Program, which is probably who you applied through, CMAP, and ask them for an update on the status of the application. All right. SSI versus Ssdi persons with disability. You're actually applying for both SSI and Ssdi at the same time. So super important when you're applying online, you're going to get a couple pages into the online application, a question about whether or not you want to apply for SSI. Check yes. That is so key. You need to check yes that you want to apply for both SSI and Ssdi. The system will figure out what you qualify for based on the information that you put in. A lot of people, when they're close to the age of 18, most of them are going to get an immediate denial letter for SSDI that a lot of people misunderstand and think that they're actually getting an SSI denial, but it says SSDI on it. And so the reason they're getting denied is because they probably haven't worked enough quarters to collect SSDI off of their own work history. And then the other ways that people get SSDI is if they have a parent who is disabled, if they have a parent who is retired, or a parent who is deceased. And so they're collecting SSDI off of that parent. And so again, you're applying for both, most likely we'll get an SSDI denial, and then hopefully we'll get approved for SSI. Supporting info, school triennial results, yes, absolutely. So submit the IEP that has the testing and triennial information. It's probably not a good use of time and space to submit an IEP that doesn't have testing on it, because IEPs, I know in general, tend to be like, these are all the person's strengths and what they're really good at doing. And that is not what you want to give to Social Security. You really want to focus on the testing results in the triennial. Did I hit everything? Dre, did I miss anything?
Amy, I'm taking over. I think you've answered everything, so I think you're good to go.
Okay, any last minute questions? If you think of anything else, I'll stick around till the end of the presentation today. So if you think of something else, you can always throw it in the chat box. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your attention. I know it's a lot of information. Again, you will get a copy of this, and we can also send out some other resources as well to everybody who attended.
Thank you so much, Amy. It's a lot of information. And I will reiterate what Amy said and what you'll hear in other presentations. You're not in this alone. We have organizations who can help support you through this process, as well as our team and our colleagues can help with this. So please don't get too overwhelmed. I know it's a lot of information, but we got you. So there have been some questions about the presentations and the recording being sent to everyone. Yes, we are recording this session again. I'll reiterate that. And we will be emailing it out to all of the attendees based on the email address that you used to sign up. And you'll get the PowerPoints as well. And the links will be enabled in that PowerPoint presentation that will also get emailed out to you. So don't worry about that. You'll get all this information. And we will take a little break because our next presentation will be starting at 10:15. So we'll give everyone a little break, a little bio break here. I'm also equipped, just so you know, kind of a warning, I do have some dad jokes that I can fill in any gaps we have in time. I really don't want you guys to make me do that because they're quite terrible. I'll give you an example just to start us out. Why don't crabs give to charity? Because they're shellfish. You know, I'm sorry, it's what I got. So please do ask questions so you don't have to hear any more dad jokes. All right, let's take a break, everyone, and we will see you back here at 10:15. Thanks so much. All right. Well, we are at 10:15. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you were able to take a little break. I also wanted to mention to the group that we were unable to share the link for winning prizes in the chat feature of this presentation. So we will be emailing out a link that you can fill out to win one of our fabulous prizes today. So look forward to that being emailed out to you instead of in the chat feature, which we thought we could do. So I just wanted to give the heads up on that. And we will get started with our next presentation. Next up, we have Stacy Blinn, who's Program Administrator of Systems Navigation here at Developmental Pathways. She will be reviewing the intake process today. And a little fun fact about Stacy, Stacy has played the violin since she was 6 years old and also plays for the Parker Symphony, which I think is just absolutely amazing and jealous of her skills. So with that, I'm going to hand things over to Stacy.
Thank you, Jenny. Okay, so like she said, my name is Stacy Blinn. I'm going to be talking a little bit about the intake process, which you can really think of as the pre-enrollment, what happens before we actually enroll onto the waiver. And I also want to let you know we will do questions at the end. And Lauren Ryan may be assisting me with some questions. She's on too. She's got a lot of information. She is the program manager of systems navigation. So she is my supervisor. Next. Okay. So here are the things we are going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about who qualifies, which I'm going to lean pretty heavily on the information that Amy provided because she has such a wealth of knowledge, and rather than re-explaining things, I'll probably refer back to what she already said. Just an overview of the initial process and what are the steps that we need to take, how do we get this done, and a little bit more about what that looks like. We're going to be talking about, these different steps and then hopefully tying it to kind of how they all fit together. But I think it's helpful to understand each step a little bit, separately. And then we're going to answer the questions. Just go ahead and add them into the chat box. You can add them in as we go or at the end, whatever you are most comfortable with. Next. So these are the steps, again, to kind of getting on the waiver. These are the things we're going to be talking about. The disability determination. Amy talked a lot about what the determination looks like for Medicaid, Social Security determinations. We're also going to be talking about a little bit of screening eligible programs. What are they? Talking about the waiver services, what waivers there are, and we're going to be really focusing on one in particular called the SLS, the Supported Living Services Waiver. We're going to be talking about what is required, not only just with benefits, but also some documentation and those kind of things that you'll want to pull together so that we can have everything we need. Talking about an assessment we call the 100.2 assessment. It's looking at different levels of daily living activities. And then a little bit about the SIS assessment, which is a standardized test that I'll get a little bit more into. And then we will pass it on to enrollment, and you'll hear another presenter after me. Next. So talking a little bit about what is an intellectual or developmental disability. So specifically what Colorado State defines this as. They define it as a disability that occurred prior to the age of 22, caused by an intellectual disability or a related neurological condition that results in a developmental disability. So some conditions are cerebral palsy, autism spectrum disorder, epilepsy, fetal alcohol syndrome, brain injury, Down syndrome. And what's really key is that we have a diagnosis either of intellectual disability, whether it's mild, moderate, severe, or one of the neurological conditions. ADHD does qualify if we have matching assessments with it. The important thing about the diagnosis and the qualifications that it impairs the person's general functioning and or adaptive functioning, meaning kind of just going through daily life and getting things done. And it's typically, it's a lifelong condition. So this is something that is, a doctor would say, will be kind of persistent throughout the individual's life. And we know that this is something that's going to be there. Okay, next. So, like I said, Amy spoke about the determination process through Social Security or Medicaid. This is a determination process for any CCB. The Community Centered Board and Developmental Pathways is one. The Resource Exchange, which was mentioned, is also another one in Colorado Springs. So to get started, you can just contact the intake line. That's going to be the best way to reach out and get this process started, because we want to make sure that somebody, you feel supported in every step of the way. There's so much information and it can be a little overwhelming, and we always want you to have somebody there with you that can answer your questions, tell you what the next step is, so that you don't have to memorize this and know everything that you're going to have to do and figure it out. You'll have a case manager, an intake case manager, working with you for that. And then we have an application that's called a request for determination, and we will request some different documentation. And then that will be completed within 30 days of us receiving the application and all of the required documents. So those 30 days gets started when we have everything we need, everything we've requested, all of the testing documents and all of that. Next. So here is what is needed for our determination for the CCB determination. That's probably the best way to define it. So that application that I mentioned, and then medical proof of an intellectual disability or neurological condition, plus testing. And so when we say medical proof, what we're talking about is paperwork provided by the doctor. There are some times when, if there's been a records review of an IEP through the school, it's documented with a medical diagnosis, who gave it and when. This can be signed off by a nurse or the psychologist who completed the records review. Signatures are very important. We want to always make sure that what we are using for the determination is signed by the right parties. So if there's questions about that as you go along, go ahead and ask your case manager. And we do want to work with you and encourage you to reach out to the school, determine if they maybe have had testing that will work. If you don't have it on hand, if you don't have it in your file, they may. Or they sometimes will assist with completing new testing. They do it for educational purposes. So we'll provide you with a list, because they may want to do a test that we don't accept. But we can give you some guidance on that for if you're requesting it. And if needed, we will certainly help and make sure that you can get the assessment, get whatever testing is needed. Next. So as Amy mentioned, some of these slides are a little bit content heavy. This would be one of them, I would say. But since you're going to be getting copies, I want to make sure that you have something you can reference and kind of know, is this going to work? What do I need? So there's some general requirements for testing. So if you're between 5 and 18 years of age, any tests done in that period with a score of 70 or below, that will be accepted, just one of those. The other thing is an adaptive test, and anybody doing an adaptive test, it needs to be completed in the last 3 years. And those adaptive tests really just look at, kind of going through daily life and the level of general impairment. And if you're over 18 and you're looking to get a determination done after you're 18, there's a little bit different requirements and how long ago they can be completed. Sometimes you might need 2 if it was in this time, but all of that's on here and we will help you. I think it's less important to memorize exactly what is needed for these determinations, and more important to just know that we're going to do this. This is the step, and we'll let you know what's accepted and what is not. The 90% confidence interval, that's kind of a complicated thing, and it would likely be explained to you if we needed to. Basically, it says we are certain that these tests are accurate up to a point of about 90%, which gives us a little room if it's a 71, but the 90% confidence brings it down. We can accept that. Next. And here are some of the tests that are accepted. We also have a list, and you can get a list because there are quite a few tests. The most important thing about the tests and the ones that we have on our list of accepted tests is that they have an average score of about 100. So it's just kind of a standard range. We know that with these tests, a score of 70 or below meets the qualification. Other tests may have different scoring methods. There are a whole lot of different, kinds of tests for this. So there are also nonverbal IQ tests, adaptive tests. Some tests are reported by family members, things like that, or parents. And I want to mention the determinations that are done through Hcbs, this determination that I'm mentioning, once you have it, you have it. Any Hcb in the state will accept another Hcb as determination. If it's done when you're 7 years old, carries with you through life. If it's done when you're 20 years old, same thing. So once you have this determination, you have it. And we will keep track of that, and we want to keep track of the testing used so that if we ever need to transfer you to another agency, that can be pretty smooth and you don't have to go through all the steps again. Next. We are going to talk a little bit about what Hcbs waivers are. That means home and community-based supports. Colorado State has several different waivers. It is an extra set of the state plan Medicaid. So when I say state plan Medicaid, I'm really talking about the benefits that anybody with Medicaid would have. So a waiver means above and beyond that. So we really are looking at home and community-based support waivers. We're really looking at what is an individual need to live in the community, but not only live in the community, but to thrive in the community and live the life of their choosing. We always want to be what we call person-centered, meaning we want to make sure we're supporting a person in the way that they want to be supported to help them kind of live the way they want to live. So we always want as much information as we can get from the individual about what they would like. And as somebody is transitioning from childhood to adulthood, we know there's going to be a lot of support from family, but we really want to make sure that they are an active participant. Next. As I mentioned, there are a lot of waivers in Colorado, and these are the waivers that are offered through developmental pathways. This will be the case for any community-centered board. There are other agencies that do other waivers, and we want to make sure you know all of your options so that as you're going through intake, you know that maybe there is another waiver that an individual may qualify for. The EBD waiver, which is elderly, blind, and disabled. There are some that may be more fitting, and we just want to make sure you know all of your options, so you're making the right choice. For children, we work with the CES waiver, the Children's Extensive Supports waiver, and as Amy mentioned, you're on that waiver. It's going to be you've already got long-term Medicaid and things. You've got Medicaid and the determination, so that's a little bit. Some of the steps are already done. So if you weren't on that, which most people aren't, it's for children with very high needs. We will just start the enrollment process and go through all of the steps. We also do the Children's Habilitation and Residential Program. That's another waiver for children. For adults, we do the Supported Living Services Waiver and the Developmental Disabilities Waiver. We are going to be focusing on the Supported Living Services Waiver, but just for a little bit of understanding, the Developmental Disabilities Waiver, which is a DD waiver is what we call it, provides residential support and a lot of support, but it has a pretty long wait list right now. And so if you are enrolling onto a waiver, we will put you on the wait list for that Developmental Disabilities Waiver, either as a safety net in case you needed it if something happened, you didn't have your natural supports to help you anymore, they were no longer able to help you. But the Supported Living Services Waiver, if we can get the benefits in place and the determination done, anybody currently who's 18 or older can be on the Supported Living Services Waiver. Next. So currently, as I mentioned about the waitlist, SLS, CES, and the, we call it the CHIRP waiver, but the CHRP waiver does not have a waitlist. It's really for individuals with risk of out-of-home placement, and some children who are on that waiver can be on it up to 21 years of age. So there are some individuals who may be transitioning to one of the SLS waivers or the DD waiver after the age of 21. If you're already connected with us with our community outreach or in the family support program, we will add you to the adult waiver waitlist at 14 years old. So some of you may already be on that. But we're going to jump in a little bit to the SLS waiver. So next. As I mentioned, benefits on top of state plan Medicaid, and 18 years or older, developmental disability, who can live independently or has enough natural supports, who if they need a lot of assistance, they are already receiving that. So a lot of times family members can be family caregivers and they're providing some support. They're also providing support that maybe they were providing when the individual was 17 years old. So now there's more options to support the family with that. But typically individuals on the SLS waiver do have some natural supports or do pretty well with living independently. And that's a goal that a lot of individuals have. And we are very happy to work to support the individual with, and I say the individual, I'm probably talking about, you or your children, but that's just the terminology is the general overview or the general term that we are using. So there are services that can support with that if an individual decides that they do want to live alone. Next. So I'm going to kind of just leave this up here. The next presentation, which will be on the actual enrollment, getting into services, she's going to go over all of this. So I don't want to, spend too much time on it. But you can look at this, and I'm just going to kind of give a couple of highlights. So services that a lot of people find very helpful. So day program is a great service. It can be in a facility, like at a site, kind of a home base, and or out in the community. A lot of individuals enjoy community options. Sometimes it's one-on-one support provided by a family caregiver, a friend of the family, and you're working on different community skills and interactions, personal care and homemaker, helping with keeping the area of the individual's home clean, and personal care to support with just kind of the daily living stuff that we all do. And respite. This is great for individuals who rely kind of heavily on their natural supports, because respite can come in and give caregivers some time to do the things that they need to do for themselves, which, as we all know, especially going through this pandemic that we've been going through, self-care is very important. And we understand the needs of caregivers are also very important. Next. So here's what we're going to ask for enrollment. Here is what we need to get things going. And when I kind of mentioned getting all the documentation in, These are kind of the things. So birth certificate, social security card, a photo ID, those are all important, and hopefully we can get them all, but some individuals may not have a photo ID yet, but we'll work with you on that. Proof of Medicaid, we're going to be kind of talking with you through this process of getting Medicaid, so we will help with that too. Either the Social Security award letter or the Medicaid disapproval. Not disapproval, don't do that. Medicaid disability approval. And we call it a professional medical information page. It's signed by your physician. It lists the diagnosis. Most importantly, it's going to list the qualifying intellectual disability that we discussed. And if applicable, we will need guardianship papers if you are working on that or if you have that. Any kind of information about adoption and any guardianship there. Especially if there's a history of adoption, that's all important information. If there's been a name change, and we definitely need that trust approval paperwork that Amy talked about. Next. So I'm going to kind of just go through this and know that these are the steps, this is what we're doing, but you already have a pretty solid base. So qualifying for benefits, qualifying for Medicaid, and getting that state level, well, getting the disability determination from Social Security or Medicaid. So, as was also mentioned, the Medicaid disability application is often a good place to start because we can maybe get that a little bit faster. And if you get that before, or if you do that, we can work with that. If a Social Security disability determination comes back as a denial, we have a little bit more work to do. So sometimes starting with that Medicaid disability application is very helpful. And if I was not clear on that, or if you have more questions, you can put it in the chat box. Okay, next. Trusts. I think we can probably breeze right through this one. Basically, we need trusts approved. I think you have a good understanding of that. Even if it's part of a pooled trust, if it's there isn't money in the trust, if the individual's name is tied to the trust, we'll need approval. And it can take a few months to be approved. So the sooner we know about the trust or the sooner we can get approval, the better. Next. So the 100.2 assessment, I'm watching my time here, okay. The 100.2 assessment is going to need to be completed to determine functional eligibility. So this is, we just say 100.2, but the ULTC, it's the Uniform Long-Term Care Assessment. This will be one that you're going to be doing yearly. So once we start and enroll in services, you'll complete this annually with your case manager. We're looking at areas like bathing, dressing, eating, going to the bathroom, mobility, transferring, and supervision levels around behavior and cognitive functioning. We're looking for what does the individual need here. And to qualify, there is a certain level of care, but we will discuss that with you, and you'll know when you're going through the 100.2 kind of what that is. It just is you've got to have a kind of a certain score in this area or this area. And to qualify, or if you qualify for the SLS waiver through this, we will. Once you qualify through this, we'll continue on with the enrollment process. Next. So the supports intensity scale assessment. This assessment is long, it's thorough, and it's comprehensive. And kind of as Amy talked about, we want to look at your worst day. This is that assessment too. It's very important. It's usually done just one time, and it determines the level of funding that you receive on the SLS waiver. So we're looking at a whole bunch of areas here: home living, community living, lifelong learning, employment, health and safety, different social activities, an individual's ability to protect and advocate for themselves, and some extraordinary behavioral or medical support. So we're looking at everything. And the important thing to know is this is not focused on a diagnosis. it's really focused on needs. So what does the individual need in order to be successful in the community? What supports are families providing? If you're, going from being a child to an adult, we'll want to really dig in and find out what is needed and what is being done to support the individual on a daily basis. I think sometimes it's hard to know what you do every day when you're a caregiver for someone. It's hard to put it into words. And I think a lot of times by the time a child is an adult, it's kind of your daily life. You are going through it and you are doing it every day, almost second nature. So sometimes you may not even be aware of everything you do. So really thinking about that and kind of as we go through the assessment and even a little bit before, what does happen in a day? What might my child need that is different from, maybe appear in their classroom. Next. And actually, I'm sorry, I actually want to say one more thing about the SIS assessment that I just spoke about. It is a standard assessment that was created for our population, for people with disabilities. It's not a Colorado state specific. It's not even a waiver specific. It's just kind of a standardized assessment that Colorado state and other states too have used to get a really good idea of an individual's needs. And they put the scores that, scored throughout the assessment, and they put that into an algorithm, and that's going to give you the support level. So the important thing about the SIS assessment, you're going to get your support level, usually permanent unless needs change. If needs change, we'll absolutely do it again. Or we can assist with getting a higher level if things are if there's a crisis, there is a situation that is, an individual needs more support. Generally though, we're looking at, it's more of a permanent assessment, not like an annual thing like the 100.2. Okay, so now I'm on the current slide here, the summary of intake in the pre-enrollment process. This is just to kind of put it in context. I just talked about a whole lot of steps and how does that fit in? How do they all fit together? So you can think of it like this. The first step, we're going to be gathering the needed information. That's going to include the information for the CCB determination. We're just getting everything, all of your documents, all of the testing that's required, and getting that determination done. We also probably around the same time, we're going to be applying for the benefits that Amy spoke about. We're going to complete the 100.2 assessment and the SIS assessment. The SIS assessment will be done once we know that the benefits are in place. And we can kind of keep moving forward with discussing some possible services and identifying providers while we're waiting for benefits to be in place. But most of that's going to be done after your intake process or pre-enrollment process with a case manager on the enrollment side. So I think, let's see, next. Okay, so sorry, was that slide in there? We can skip this one. Okay, next. Okay, sorry, I think we went back a slide and then had to go forward. So you're going to work with a few different case managers. You're going to be talking to different departments. There'll be quite a lot of people there, but you should always know who your case manager is, who you can call with questions, and you should always know the step that you're on and the things that are needed. And it really helps to just break it down to one piece. We're going to get through it. There's a lot, but we're going to just do one step at a time. You will always know what is needed at any point in time. You'll always know where you are and what's next. But you will work with several people. And then, like I said, we're going to move on to enrollment. But I think now we can do any questions. There have been questions that have popped up. And here's just the intake line phone number again.
Yeah, one question, excuse me, came in. Is a physical disability fall under this application, or is there a separate application? My son is under a 504, not an IEP.
Great question. So we are looking at, I think the best word would be the neurological conditions. Sometimes those present as very physical. So when we are talking about the testing that's needed, the 100.2, even the SIS assessment, and the test that we need for determination, sometimes things may be more medical, and sometimes things may be more behavioral or cognitive. So something like cerebral palsy may present as very physical, but it's still that kind of developmental disability, long-term disability throughout the individual's life. And so what we're looking at is the level of need. So if there is a determination that, or there is a diagnosis that really impairs functioning, and sometimes that's because an individual needs help with daily living tasks physically. Sometimes they need help with mobility, actually getting into the shower, getting dressed, those things. So yes, there's a lot of disabilities that are more medical than cognitive. I see another one that your son turns 18 in March. It's going to be pregnancy leave for the case manager. Yeah, so if you're already on the CES waiver, your case manager, we will have coverage. We always have coverage when a case manager goes on leave. So you will be working with a different case manager during that leave, but we will make sure that you are getting enrolled. We start that process typically about 6 months before the individual. We start really kind of talking about it and getting prepared for it, but it should be a pretty smooth transition so that services start right when he's 18. And if you have questions, you can reach out to your case manager now. It sounds like they probably are not already on leave, and discuss that and what that is going to look like. But we have a pretty robust coverage plan in developmental pathways because it's so important, like I said, that you have somebody to talk to and you know who your case manager is. We don't want it to be a situation where you're going through all of this. It's a big change and you don't know what's going on. So you will be taken care of. Any other questions?
Yeah, another question came in. If you are already on CES, is there still a wait list for DD?
I'm so sorry. Can you say that again?
If you are already on CES, is there another wait list for DD?
Oh, okay. Good question. If you're already on CES, no. So children on the CES waiver, as I kind of mentioned, they're individuals with kind of the highest needs. There's criteria about, nighttime hours where the child is awake probably several times per night, at least a couple or few times. There may be very high medical needs, maybe very high behavioral needs. And so they are able to go right to the DD waiver. And so we will kind of start talking about this when an individual is 14, just kind of bringing it up at meetings, monitorings, and discussing it. And then once you are 18, you will have the choice. Do you want to go on SLS or do you want to go on DD? That's how it currently is. Things with waitlists might change. It may go down. It may become longer. We're really working hard, though, so that people who need the DD waiver, who want to pick that at some point in their adulthood, have that option. So that is something we've been working with the End the Wait campaign. There's been some legislation to help end that, and we really hope that it goes down soon. But for right now, yes, children on the CES waiver, you can go on the fast line to the DD waiver.
Thanks, Stacy.
Can I ask one more thing? Oh, I think I did mention it about the DD waiver. I think some parents feel a little bit uncomfortable. Maybe their child has been on the SLS waiver for a while. Maybe caregivers are grandparents or people who are aging, or maybe you're just worried, like, what will happen if I'm not able to care for my child anymore at some point and they're on this SLS waiver? I do want to mention that we do have ways to support with that. We will do maybe an emergency enrollment onto the DD waiver, come up with creative solutions, but I also want to make sure that you know that you are going to be supported and your child is going to be supported, and we will work that out because it can be scary thinking, oh my gosh, there's a many year wait list for this DD waiver and what happens. So I just want to kind of let you know that we have plans for that, okay?
I kind of touched on the last question, which was when does services stop with EP for developmental pathways? Is it a certain age?
When do services stop?
Yes.
So these waivers are lifelong. So once you're an adult and you're on the SLS waiver, the DD waiver, we're not going to take them away. You will never age out. Does that answer the question? As long as they're needed.
Yes, and Jill just dropped another question in the chat. Would the SAT test results suffice as an IQ test?
No, I don't believe that they would. No, they're not on the test, so it's really specific intellectual, cognitive, and or adaptive testing that we're looking at. That's kind of more of a test to look at kind of educational things only. Any other questions?
There were some others, and I'm not sure if you addressed this already, Stacy. One is, let's see, my child is already on the CS waiver and he is 14. Would he be on the wait list for the SLS and DD waiver, or just one of those? Do I need to put him on a wait list, or is he automatically on one?
So if your child is 14, right? Is that what the question says? Okay. If your child is 14, yes, you should automatically go on the wait list for both the SLS and the DD waiver. The DD waitlist is kind of state run. It's a little bit different. We have an internal SLS waiver that we manage. We don't see a waitlist coming for the SLS waiver, but we still have that because what we have is on your 14th birthday, we have a date that says this is your place. Well, this is where you are. This is the date that you were put on the wait list, and that stays with you. So the benefit to having it at 14 is that you have an earlier date than, say, if you joined at 18. But I would also recommend that if your child is 14, reach out to your case manager and just make sure. Make sure that they are on that wait list, and also maybe ask if you can talk to monitoring their service plan a little bit about their options as they get older, and just start thinking about it.
Thank you. And then there was one, where can I find the professional medical information page?
So as we go through intake, that will be one of the things that you are given. It's a form that pretty much all CCBs use, and we will say, hey, here's this, and have your doctor fill it out. If you need one, call our intake line. If you want one like right now, we will be happy to support with that. Age out of therapy such as PT or speech, yes. So those are things that are, so maybe not PT, but speech in particular. Speech and physical therapy are offered through the Medicaid state plan. Typically for children, speech can go up to 21. And the reason for this is that speech therapy is intended to kind of support and get the individual to the place where they are kind of reaching their full speech potential. So on the for adults, you may see speech therapy for something short term where we have a goal, like after somebody had a stroke. We have a goal to, kind of do 6 months of speech therapy and get back as much communication abilities as we can. However, on the adult waivers, behavior services are also available to individuals over 21 because it's available under 18, or under 21 is available through the state plan. Over 21 is available through the waiver, and behavior really can focus on, okay, so we know we've got some communication impairment, we've got some limitations, and behavior will say, what is the best way that we can support you with communicating effectively? Maybe that's some signs, or maybe that's different gestures, but it's really focusing on, okay, this is where we are, and this is the level of impairment that we have. How do we make sure that the individual can communicate to the best of their ability in whatever way that means? And it may not necessarily be so speech focused. But that really helps because, and it ties into behavior, because a lot of times we see behavioral issues arising due to that frustration of like, I can't get this across to you. So how do I do that? So the behavior services really do encompass a lot of that. If your child moves to another state. So if your child is going to move to another state, every state has their own plans. Before you go, I would research kind of what it is, try to get in touch with an agency in a different state. What we can do is send them all of the records that we have. I actually do transfers for developmental pathways, and so I'm more than happy to get our records team to pull together records, send it out to wherever it needs to go. But what we're talking about, the waivers, the determination through the CCB, all of that is Colorado specific. Any other questions?
And then there was one, to my knowledge, autism isn't a medical diagnosis. How do I meet this requirement?
Autism is a neurological, so it is an accepted diagnosis. So when we're talking about medical diagnosis, we don't necessarily mean something that is physical impairment. We just mean an official diagnosis that is given by a medical provider, physician. So it doesn't necessarily have, some of our individuals have no medical needs that at all, and that's totally okay.
All right, great questions.
Yeah.
I think we got them all.
Great. Well,
Please send them again. There were a lot of great questions.
there were.
Appreciate, because it means less dad jokes.
Yes, I was working very hard to
Thank you. I
hard to take up that
appreciate your
time.
support with that.
Yeah, absolutely. But if you have any more questions, our intake team on that intake line, you can even go to our website. But we are more than happy to support. Okay, and it was so great being here, and we are happy to have you with DP and excited to help with this transition.
Thank you so much, Stacy. Such good information. Thank you so much. All right. We're doing pretty good on time, 10:57. So I think I will move us into the next presentation that's set to start at 11. So hopefully we're ready for that, everyone. Oh, I just got information. We got another question. What happens if, well, I think we answered that. What happens if our child moves to another state? I think we addressed.
I think that was the one I saw. In
yes. Okay. I'm getting different messages here and there. But yes, as Stacy said, I mean, if you're planning on moving, always important to do as much research as you can in the new state, because the system looks different everywhere, unfortunately. But we can certainly help send important information to you that you may need to access those supports and services in another state.
And I would also add, just like you said, they are all very different. And you will notice if you kind of are researching different states, some states have, pretty robust plans like Colorado does. We really offer a lot here, and we're lucky to be able to have so much here that can help individuals. I've noticed in other states, sometimes it can be quite a bit less. And so the planning around what is that going to look like? Sometimes, you're going to move. It's for a job. You have to go. You've got family. But kind of really planning on what is available, how do I use it, and how do I make sure all of the needs are met? So just planning for that is the most important thing.
All right. Thanks, Stacy. All right. Our last presenter today is Mary Stuckwish, a senior enrollment case manager at Developmental Pathways. She will be reviewing the enrollment process and active services. Fun fact about Mary, Mary hopes to one day buy land in the mountains and put a tiny house or yurt on it. And I have to admit, that's my husband's dream too. He is fascinated with yurts, and it's just a fun word to say. I don't know if I'd live in it with him, but I appreciate his dreams.
Be a nice weekend getaway or something.
Yeah. So with that, I'll pass it along to Mary. Take it away.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Mary Stuckwish here, Senior Enrollment Case Manager I'm going to go through a little bit more in depth into the services available on the SLS waiver and just kind of what the enrollment process looks like. So the SLS waiver promotes individuals' independence and decision-making through really tailoring the services and supports to meet their needs and goals. So these services can look kind of different for each individual. The agencies really are there to tailor them to make sure that they're individual specific and meeting what they want. So personal care is one of the first services, and it kind of goes a lot like how Stacy went through with behavior being available at the age of 21. Personal care works the same way because that can be met through Medicaid state plan up until the age of 21 as well. So after the age of 21, personal care can be added to the plan. This could be for things like unskilled care for activities of daily living. So the things addressed in that 100.2, eating, dressing, those kinds of things. Can help with money management, meal planning, grocery shopping. It includes assistance with scheduling and reminders to attend, medical appointments, dental appointments, therapy appointments, things like that. Mentorship can assist in promoting self-advocacy through instructing, providing experiences, advising. So an example of that would be the interviewing process for picking providers. So somebody helping the individual through that and deciding who they want to work with. It can cover things like help for applying for housing, setting up bank accounts, things like that. Homemaker Basic, there's two different kinds of Homemaker. I have Homemaker just listed, but there are two different kinds. Homemaker Basic, which assists with basic household tasks. So cleaning, laundry, things like that. And then there's Homemaker Enhanced, which includes the things that would be covered through Homemaker Basic with the addition of instruction or teaching how to. So if the individual wants to learn how to clean on their own, that can fall under Homemaker Enhanced. Another thing that can make it Homemaker Enhanced would be if there's extraordinary cleaning to be done. So this is usually bodily fluids, blood, things like that. If things like that are needing to be cleaned, that can add Enhanced to the plan. Respite is available. This is a break for caregivers. So for respite, caregivers do not have to leave the home. The respite can be done in the individual's home or in the home of the respite care provider. That more so is done through Respite Day, which is something that's offered for anything over 10 hours. So families are usually using this for overnights. If they need to go, the example I usually give is, if you have a wedding that you need to go and spend the night for, somebody to stay either with the individual in their home, or that individual can go and stay at the caregiver's home if that was something that worked out too. So that's kind of how respite works. Behavior services are available as well. There's behavioral consultation, assessment, counseling, and line staff to address challenging behaviors. Massage therapy, which is kind of exactly what it sounds like. That's typically done in the home. I would say most families do sessions weekly. It's usually 1 hour sessions. You don't have to though. If 1 hour a week is too much, you guys can do, every other week or once a month, whatever, again, works for the individual, your schedule, things like that. Movement therapy is music therapy that's used as a therapeutic tool for maintenance of behavioral, developmental, social, communication, and gross motor skills. Massage therapy, movement therapy, and the next one that I'm going to go through, hippotherapy, all do require an annual letter of recommendation written by a physician, any therapist, just stating, why the individual needs these services. Hippotherapy is the movement, uses the movement of a horse to assist in development and enhancement of skills, gross motor, sensory integration, attention, cognition, social, behavioral, communication. All of those things can be helped through hippotherapy. This does not include therapeutic riding though. Day program is next, and I know Stacy touched on day program just a little bit. There are two different kinds. So there's specialized debilitation and supported community connections. Specialized debilitation is what Stacy mentioned, where you're kind of on site somewhere. So you're in a building doing different activities, classes, whatever is on the schedule for that day. And the supported community connection is being out in the community doing something. So there's, various activities places, events that they go and do. The individual can do both. I will say that most day program providers do offer both, where maybe the individual would go to the site in the morning, spend a couple of hours there, they go out in the afternoon to do some stuff in the community, and then maybe end the day back at the site before everyone goes home. There are some providers that only do supported community connections. So the agency will come pick them up in the morning, they'll go directly into the community, start doing stuff, and then they drop them off at the end of the day or the end of the activity. So kind of up to the individual on if they want to participate in both or just one. Most day programs do provide calendars too, that maybe for like the next month that the individual could look at and kind of pick what days they would want to go to based on what activities and events and stuff they'll be doing and going to. With COVID, day program has changed just a little bit, and I know that they are doing a good job of getting people back into kind of going out in smaller groups. A lot of agencies did start virtual options though, and still have those going on. So if that's something that individuals and families aren't super comfortable with people going out into the community yet or being around people, virtual options are available as well. There are pre-vocational and supported employment services available through the waiver. So pre-vocational is kind of prior to supported employment if an individual needed it. So that is preparing the individual for community employment, working on gaining the skills, getting comfortable with the idea of community employment. Once an individual is ready, supported employment could kick in. It's more intensive ongoing supports that enable individuals to perform in regular work settings. So this can include assessment and identification of interests and capabilities in preparation for job development, or assist the individual in finding a job. And then once they would find a job, there can be like a job coach that would go and assist them on the job as well until they needed it. So that the goal is always to kind of back that off eventually so that the individual would be able to be independent, but that person would be able to provide as much support as needed. One little thing to just let you guys know about that, for supported employment, it is required that an individual apply and then go through services through Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, which is referred to as DVR, prior to receiving the service. We will tell you though that you don't have to, that sometimes when you apply to that, you're waiting a few months before you're actually starting. So if an individual is ready for supported employment, we can add that to the service plan through the SLS waiver. Once DVR kicks in, you know, if that's a month or 2 months down the road, we would just switch over that funding to DVR for I think it's usually about 90 days that they work with them. And then once they close their case, we can add it back to the SLS waiver. So they have taken away you having to wait to complete DVR. We can get it started on the waiver first. Transportation is available as well. So when I talked about day program, a lot of those agencies provide transportation, which is wonderful. Some of them don't. So there are things that are available, options for individuals that it would work for. Bus passes, accessory tickets, taxi vouchers, things like that are available through the waiver. Again, for day program, a lot of those agencies provide transportation. Bus passes and accessory tickets can also be used for things that are not service related. So if an individual needed a bus pass to, you know, get to the store and do their grocery shopping, things like that can be added into the plan as well. And then there's home modifications, vehicle modifications, and assistive technology that are available. There is additional documentation needed for these to be added to the service plan. I will tell you guys, in enrollments, we do not deal with these very much. These are very lengthy processes. So we do usually prefer that you wait until you get to your active case manager to start these, because it can get really funky with things getting lost in translation between one case manager to the next. And again, with it being a long process, it's usually just much smoother if that one person carries it out. But just to let you know, there is an outlined process to get to access home adaptations, including a home evaluation, receiving a letter of recommendation, and obtaining multiple bids for whatever the job is. For assistive tech, a Medicaid denial may be necessary prior to obtaining waiver funding for whatever the item is. Examples of items that are not covered under the waiver are things that are educational in nature, computers, and communication supports. Vehicle modifications can only be used to adapt individuals' already existing primary means of transportation. It will not cover the purchase of a vehicle. I also like to be really upfront with my families in enrollment. Please don't ever pay for anything out of pocket, hoping that the waiver will reimburse you through for any of these things, because they won't. So if there's ever anything that you're interested in getting covered through the waiver, always reach out to your case manager ahead of time so we can kind of start that process of looking into if it can be approved. Unfortunately, we have had families pay. It's usually more so for the assistive tech, but pay for things out of pocket, and then unfortunately the waiver will not pay them back. So an individual can participate in as many services as they're interested in, as long as it fits within their budget. So Stacy went over the SIS assessment and that sets the support level. And that support level sets the budget, the annual budget for how much money the individual has to go towards services. So that is like usually if the number's higher, providers are getting paid more to assist with services for that individual. So usually those budgets are much higher. There is a requirement on the waiver and all of the waivers that we work with that the individual must use at least one billable service per month to remain eligible. So that just means, you know, as long as you're doing Homemaker, at least for 1 hour a month, you're good, but we do have to bill at least one service per month to remain eligible for that waiver. Wonderful. Okay, next slide. Thank you. This slide goes through roles and responsibilities. So when enrolled into waiver services, it is required that you meet with your case manager 4 times per year. These meetings used to be required to be done in person. That is obviously not a requirement right now, and we don't know if that requirement's going to come back after the PHE, or if virtual meetings will still be an option. So we're kind of waiting on that, and we'll keep you guys updated as we know more. The 4 meetings, the first being the annual service plan meeting. So you kind of do the annual service plan meeting between intake and enrollment. So in intake, they're doing that 100.2. In enrollment, we do the enrollment service plan. When you have your annual meeting, those two kind of combine. So we update the 100.2 and we go through the service plan, just making sure that all the information is still accurate. Nothing needs to be changed or taken out or anything like that. And then we submit that for the next plan year. So that meeting does happen 3 months prior to the start of the next service plan. So just know that. The other 3 meetings are called monitoring meetings, and these are quicker check-ins just to see how things are going. Hey, are you happy with services? Do you need to make any changes? You know, do you need to add anything? Stuff like that. But please know you don't have to wait for these meetings to come up if you need something, or if you need to make a change, or if you have a problem or something like that. Your case manager is available at any time, so you can reach out at any time. You do not have to wait for those meetings. We ask that families are letting providers know what works for the individual and what doesn't. So like I said in the beginning, SLS really, these services are here to be tailored to the individual, what works for them. So we ask that when you guys are to the point of calling providers, talking with them, basically interviewing to see who you want to work with, that you're really letting them know, hey, this works for this person, this doesn't. This works with our schedule, this doesn't, things like that. Once providers are chosen, your case manager coordinates and communicates with all providers to get everything set up. So basically, once providers are chosen, we kind of start the process of, all right, great, let's get everyone, you know, on the same page. Let's talk about a start date. Let's talk about how many hours per week or per month, what the scheduling is going to look like. We work all the numbers. We make sure everything fits in the budget. So we kind of do all of that part. We can always complete revisions to add and remove services as well. So I always like to, especially with my enrollment families, let them know you can add things. So there might be a ton of services that you're interested in, but it might feel a little overwhelming in the beginning to start up with all of them. So even if you just want to start with maybe 1 or 2 and then add more down the road as you kind of are figuring out your schedule, getting more comfortable with waiver services and the way things work, we can always add things as long as there is that room in the budget to do so. You have the right to work with any provider you choose. So that being said, your case manager is not allowed to choose providers for you, but we can help you narrow things down if you're feeling overwhelmed, especially in the enrollment process. You might get a ton of responses because you might be requesting quite a few services. So if you get a bunch and you're just like, well, this is too much, can you help me narrow it down? We can absolutely do that. We just can't say this is the agency that you should work with. That being said, if you do pick a provider and you're unhappy with them at any time, you're not stuck. So please let your case manager know. We can always have a conversation with that agency and look into a new caregiver working with the individual through that agency, or if it's the agency that you're not happy with, we can send out a request to find a completely new agency to switch services to. Wonderful. Next slide, please. This just kind of outlines the enrollment process. So the first step being that an enrollment case manager is assigned. So once the individual has completed all the intake steps and met that financial and functional eligibility, they're assigned to an enrollment case manager. The enrollment case manager will then work to set up the enrollment meeting with the individual and family. That's kind of based on that county approval to start services. So if you kind of remember, we talked about a little bit earlier that the county has about 90 days to get us approval to start. And that being said, we also kind of have timeline requirements that we need to meet with, being that services have to be started within 90 days of holding the enrollment meeting. So those two things will kind of determine when your case manager might suggest having the enrollment meeting. Problem being, if we go past that 90 days, we have to re-update everything and kind of do it all over again. And we don't want families to have to do that. So it's possible that you could hear from your enrollment case manager and they could say, hey, I've been assigned, but let's meet next month, because then we're planning to have approval by the next month, and then we don't have to worry about potentially having to restart everything. So that's usually kind of how things work for us. If we already have county approval, once they've been assigned to an enrollment case manager, we're usually able to meet with you pretty quickly after being assigned. At the enrollment meeting, the CM goes through the disclosure of information about the waiver. They get some more information from the family on natural supports, third-party resources, any state plan benefits the individual has. We document all of that. We then go through all of the services available and talk with the individual and family to find out what they are interested in, the goals for the services, and kind of the scheduling that you're looking for. That goes into the RFP that we send. So you'll see that it says the next step is send the RFP for services selected. So, and I'll dive more into what the RFP is in just a minute here, but that we put information on that about scheduling. So we try to be as detailed as we can in those so that providers really know what they're responding for, so that you're not getting people that are responding that can't actually meet your needs. And then once a provider is chosen and we have county approval, a service start date can be set and the case manager will complete and submit the service plan. That's kind of what the brief enrollment process looks like. Next slide, please. So this is the RFP. So the RFP stands for Request for Proposal. So you can see here in the little thing that it says determine services needed. So we do that in the enrollment service plan meeting. And then the case manager sends out the request for proposal to all of the agencies that are approved to provide services through the waiver. So agencies must go through a pretty extensive approval process in order to be able to provide and bill for services through the waiver. That being said, we can only choose from providers who are approved. So you can't just kind of get online and Google providers that, you know, offer this service because they may not be approved to work through the waiver. So once that we have that information, we send out the RFP. The RFP is confidential and anonymous, but clearly lays out the individual's support needs and goals for services. We submit and send it out to all of the providers so that all of the providers have the same, you know, capacity to provide respond if they can. So we always hope that providers are going to read these thoroughly, learn about the individual, what they're looking for, and only respond if they really can meet the needs and schedule everything that this individual is looking for. Sometimes I will tell you that's not always the case, and we do have providers that respond, and then unfortunately once families start talking to them, they realize it doesn't work. We try to weed those out as much as we can, but unfortunately that does happen sometimes. Providers review the request though, and then they'll respond back to the case manager. I think providers usually have about 2 weeks to get that response in, and then that email comes directly to your enrollment case manager. You're not getting those. You don't have to worry about sifting through all of those. Once we have all of those positive responses, we write up what we call an RFP response letter and send it over to you. So that includes the contact information, name, everything for each provider that responded and what they've responded for. At that point, you guys can start calling and meeting with providers. I said before, basically interviewing them to see who you want to work with, who feels comfortable. You can do meet and greets. I know some people, are meeting back in person. Some people are still doing virtual, whatever you're comfortable with. Your case manager will check in with you pretty regularly on provider choice to see how things are going, if you need any support in contacting any of the agencies or have any questions. And then again, once providers are chosen and we have that county approval, you can set the start date and get that service plan submitted. Great. Okay, and then next slide, please. I wanted to go through Family Caregiver is a service delivery option that's available through the SLS waiver. So it is only available for certain services. So just be aware of that. And a family member or friend who is over the age of 18 and not a legally responsible person, which would be a spouse of the individual in services, could be hired on to provide services to the individual. So parents do this. We have aunts, uncles, grandparents. We've had, friends of the family. Doesn't have to be a family member. Be hired on through one of the agencies that's approved to work through the waiver. They basically become an employee of whatever agency you guys would choose. The process still works the same, where we send the RFP. We just note on the RFP what services family caregivers being requested for, and then those agencies know that they are responding positively to hire someone into their agency. There is training that's required in order to do this. Most agencies make it really easy and convenient, and they're just kind of online trainings that are not hard to complete. CPR and first aid certification is also required for family caregiver. And the services that are eligible on the SLS waiver for family caregiver are the personal care, homemaker, mentorship, respite, day program, supported employment, and transportation. Okay, I think that's it for that one. Next slide, please. So some benefits of enrolling into the SLS waiver while still in the transition program. I have run into families who I meet with them and they're like, oh, all these services sound so great, but we're still in transition. So I don't really know how much time we have or how much of this we need right now. But there are benefits of enrolling into the SLS waiver while still in the transition program. By enrolling into the SLS waiver now, we eliminate the risk of that potential waitlist in the future. So Stacey went over that, currently there's no waitlist for SLS, but we don't know, there's no guarantee that that's going to be the case forever. So enrolling now makes sense due to the unpredictability of waitlist status in the future. Circumstances may be very different in the future. So also prevents like a rush to enroll towards the end of a transition program. So by combining both transitions and SLS waiver services, you prevent any lapse in services after completion of the transitions program. Allows for a more smooth continuation of supports and services. You don't need to start all services that you're interested in. So I kind of went over, we can do revisions to the plan to add services at any time. So don't feel like you have to start every single thing that the individual is interested in. Even if you just kind of want to get comfortable with one while finishing up transitions, that's absolutely fine. The SLS waiver provides a lot of services not offered by the transition program as well. So utilizing services now kind of lets you get to know providers, build relationships, meet new people, be involved in community activities, things like that. The transition program can usually be flexible with waiver services as well. So I've had individuals start day program kind of slowly while in transition, and they might go maybe 1 day a week or just in the afternoon. And transitions are usually really willing to work with that and helping the individual get comfortable with this upcoming change. Great, and then next slide, please. There we go. Oh. Okay, there we go. This is my last one. Transfer to an active case manager. So once services have started, and even if that's just the one service, if you've chosen that you just want to start with one for now, absolutely fine. So once that's started, the enrollment is considered to be complete, and the individual will be added to a caseload build is what we call it, and will transfer to an active case manager. It's usually about a month later though. So don't feel like you're going to start services and then all of your supports are going to change because you're going to move on to a new person. That's not how it works. It's usually about a month later. And when the transition is ready to take place, you receive a warm handoff email from the enrollment case manager. It provides all of the contact information for the assigned active case manager and their supervisor. And it lays out everything that the enrollment case manager has completed and then what the new active case manager will need to complete or follow up on. The letter will also list out all of the members of the team so that the new case manager is aware of who everyone is and who they will need to contact for what. So don't feel like you're going to have to then, catch them up on everything. Just, you can let them know if we've missed anybody on the team, but usually we're pretty good about making sure we get everyone in there and listing out who they are in relation to the team. The active case manager is the one that then will go on and provide all support from there. So they will complete the required 4 meetings. So the annual service plan meeting and the 3 monitoring meetings. But please remember that they're available as needed as anything comes up. So again, you don't have to wait for those meetings to reach out to your case manager. They can also do, revisions to the plan to change and add services, again, as long as it fits in the budget. So, and I think that is about it. So I think we're doing pretty good on time if anyone has any questions.
Yeah, there was one question that came in. I did drop in the DVR online link, but their question is, how can they contact or get info about pre-voc supported deployment teams?
Great. So if an individual is not yet on SLS, I am sure that we can probably still provide some information on that, but we also have a lot of information on the DVR. So if a family wanted to get started with DVR right away and kind of start that process, we can absolutely do that. What we usually do is send over the family the release of information, the application, have them fill that out, and then send it back to the enrollment case manager. And then we just submit on their behalf. So there are a couple extra documents that we fill out, and then we send it off to be submitted to DVR for them. And then a DVR counselor, I think is what they're called. Counselor would be assigned to their case, and they would reach out to the family then to get that ball rolling through DVR.
Awesome. Thanks, Mary. Another question is, we are planning on enrolling our daughter in her high school transition program after her senior year. How does this affect the process, or do they work together?
In my experience, they can work together. So they can't provide services at the same time, if that makes sense, but they can work together and be flexible. So like I kind of mentioned, if an individual wanted to do day program 1 day a week, say, but do their transition program the other 4 days, they could absolutely do that. They just can't overlap. So they can't get any waiver services while doing any of those transition services. But again, usually not an issue. Transitions programs are, I think, pretty comfortable with the waivers and how they work, and usually pretty willing to kind of work together as a team so that the individual feels supported and feels comfortable, again, because it's a big transition. So they're usually pretty open to, yeah, they can, go 1 day a week to start getting comfortable with what this change is going to be.
What is the time period / age you mean for a transition period, quote unquote?
It's my understanding that an individual can be in their transition program. And when I say transition, that's what I mean is the program that's after school, which I believe is age 17 or 18 through 20. And if somebody else knows and I'm wrong, feel free to jump in.
Here, those supports through the school, the transition program, can go until age 21.
We were told that the wait list for the day programs can be several months to several years long. Does going through your program bump the child up on the list, ? And does the day program go at the same time as Bridge? Or is this a supplement after the Bridge program ends?
So it could be either. So like I mentioned, they can kind of work together where if an individual wanted to do day program 1 day a week, they could do that. Or they could wait and do day program once Bridge ended. They could absolutely do that. As far as the wait lists for day program, I, in my experience, have never heard of people having to wait on a long wait list. So I don't know if I would necessarily say that our program bumps them up the list. I've just never heard of that. We follow the RFP for finding day program services. We send out that request, and then I've never had an issue with getting responses back from that. So I don't know that that necessarily answers your question. So I'm sorry, but in my experience of it being an enrollment case manager for the past few years, I've never really had people have too much trouble getting into day program.
Thanks, Mary. Do we have to reapply at 18 if they are already on the Medicaid waiver, Medicaid with CES?
My understanding is that you do not need to reapply for Medicaid, that once you have Medicaid, you have it and you wouldn't need to reapply. It would just be the switching of waivers, but the Medicaid would stay the same is my understanding. And if Amy is still on here and I'm wrong, she can jump in, but I think that that's correct, that once the long-term care, you have it, I think you're good.
Amy, were you gonna chime in?
I'm here, sorry, just getting my headphones in.
You're good.
Okay, yes, that is correct. You don't have to reapply for Medicaid, but every year you have to do what's called a redetermination for Medicaid. So you are filling out paperwork each year, but you don't reapply. Once you do the 100.2 assessments, your level of care assessment, we submit paperwork from that to Medicaid to show what waiver you're on or going on to.
Thanks, Amy.
And Mary, there's just a few more questions in the chat. One question is, what is the Bridge program? And then the other one is, are the day programs equipped for significantly aggressive behavioral in adults?
Yes, so Bridge program, I'm going to be honest, that is not something that I'm super knowledgeable on. Everything that they do, that is what's offered through the school. So that is not, one of our programs. That's an additional school program. And for the day programs, my answer is yes. So there are certain day programs that will respond for higher behavioral. There are some that are not going to be equipped, but there are some that are. So again, that's why our RFP is really important, that we're as detailed as possible in just laying out the individual's needs, what they're looking for, what they need, the support that they need, all of that, so that agencies are really hopefully only responding if they actually can support the individual, to weed out, the agencies that might not be able to, so that you guys aren't calling a bunch of people that can't actually support. But yes, there are day programs out there that can.
All right, I think that's all the questions. Right, Dre? Got 'em.
Yep, that's all I got over here.
Right,
Perfect.
thanks.
Thank you so much, Mary.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone.
And are there any, before we move forward, any other additional questions anyone had about any of the presentations so far? If so, please throw those in the, oh, here we go, Q&A. This one. Is there going to be a presentation on DD waiver? Excellent question. I'm sure we can take that back to our group to see if that is something we can additionally provide. It's good to know what families are looking for and what kind of information. So I will definitely make sure that our team, especially with Allison Belding, who helped put this together, knows that is something that families are interested in. So thank you for that. Anything else? I would like us to take just a quick break. I'm not trying to delay things, but just to give us some time to get up, stretch, have a little bio break real quick, just a few minutes. So if we can plan to come back at 11:38, and then we will start our parent panel. So we will see you back here in a few minutes. Thank you so much. All right. All right, thank you, everyone. Thanks for hanging in there with us. I know it's been a long morning, but hopefully you're getting a lot of great information. All right. We will now be moving on to the last portion of our workshop, which is the parent panel. So these are parents who have individuals that have experienced the transition into adult services. They will talk about their stories and be open for live Q&A. Please be sure to enter your questions in the Q&A box for the parent panel. And please help me welcome our panel. Let me do some quick introductions here. Today we have Jill Akame. If you want to wave, Jill. Hi, Jill. And we have Laura Ayers. Hi, Laura. And we have Cassandra Berry. I'm having to scroll through to see everyone. Hi, Cassandra. And lastly, we have Sandy Polizotto. Hi, Sandy.
There we go.
All right. So what I would like to do is have each of you share a little bit about your family, your experience with adult services. And after all of you have shared, we will then move to questions from the attendees. So let's start with Jill. Jill, can you please tell us about your family and your experience with adult services?
Sure, I can try. It has been a little while for transition services. My older son, Alex, is now 28, almost 29. And so he went through transition quite some time ago. So I'm going to rely on some people like Laura, who's gone through this much more recently, for some information. Alex, as I said, is 28. He has autism, IDD. He has a lot of anxiety issues. He had some very challenging behavioral issues, which meant he was eligible for this Children's Extensive Services waiver when he was under 18, and he transitioned into the Supported Living Services waiver when he was 18. At 19, his behaviors became severe enough that we needed to, we couldn't really safely have him live at home anymore. So he lived in a host home for about 4 years. I think it was 4 years. And that was wonderful in some ways, but also his behaviors continued to be difficult for someone who really was living with him 24/7. So Alex currently is living in a group home that is run by the Wheat Ridge Regional Center. So if people have any issues or questions about that situation, it's a little different. So that's kind of it. We also have a younger son, Christian, who is on the 7-year bachelor's college program, working full-time now and going part-time. And we are hoping to see a diploma maybe in December, maybe. So that's the story there.
Thank you, Jill. I love that. Support his journey.
Yeah, we do support the journey. Yes, I'm not sure if it's ever going to end, but we're hopeful.
Thank you, Jill.
Yep.
Move on to Laura Ayers. Can you please share with us a little bit about?
Am I muted? No. Good.
Nope,
We can hear you.
Hi, I have a son, Christopher, who is diagnosed with Fragile X syndrome and is nonverbal and has severe anxiety. He has transitioned nicely from, he was on the Hcbs waiver to the SLS waiver, and he started receiving services in school. The first thing we did was order wipes. So that's a service for you to consider if you don't have anything else you're interested in while they're in transition. At 21, he then left transition and went into a day program. And for kids like ours, like Jill's and mine, when they have a little bit of behavior or a lot, day programs can say no. They don't want them. Or if they're not fully toilet trained, they can say no. And I think for us, that was kind of a rude awakening. Whereas in schools, they kind of have to do what is good for the child. In adult services, you kind of have to find what fits your child. So that was kind of something to do and figure out. The first thing we did was, oh God, my brain, it's like Saturday morning. The first thing we did was order wipes, get on the waiver. Then we did SLS or SSI. And because they will always go back and backdate the money that you get for that. And then we did guardianship. So that's kind of the order in which we did it. It took us about 3 years to kind of find the right program for Christopher, like hit or miss. And so it's a little frustrating because your case manager can't tell you like, oh, I've heard really good things about this program, or I've heard not good things about this program. And I think that's what's hard. And so it's really important for you to connect with other families and find out the services they've heard about, and you'll see those better day programs rise to the top. So we finally have found the right fit, and it's been about 3 years. But it is like drinking from a hose again, because it's so different than school services. And I could go on.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you for
So-
restraining, Laura.
Sorry, I know. It's like, okay, stop.
No, you have such good information to share and stories. Thank you. Let's move on to Cassandra.
Good morning. I go by CJ. Feel free to call me CJ. And I am the proud parent of 4 kids, but I'm here because of my oldest, David Jr. He is 21. He just turned 21 last August, so we're still freshly navigating some things. We're in the Colorado Springs Falcon area, so he's in District 49. So if anyone's in our area, I know a little bit more about that. Let's see, like Laura, we navigated SSI, guardianship. It took us a while for guardianship, so we got medical power of attorney, things like that in the meantime, while we were waiting on it and swimming through the legal stuff. He's on the SLS, we're his provider, so we go through another company that allows us to be his provider, so they pay us for his services. He's in a day program. He hasn't been, unfortunately, since COVID, but we're working on getting him back in. We're just working transportation now. We're out in Falcon and his program is in Colorado Springs. So it's a nice little drive. It's a distance and not a lot of people want to do that transportation. So he was going to transition services for 5 days a week when we were working with the school district. Now that he's no longer with the school district's transition program, it's on us to figure out transportation. We're lucky we found a really great program. I'm with Laura. I talked to every parent I could. My district said, we work with this program. And I was like, I don't like that program. So know that you have the power. You can talk to other people and find the right program for your kid. Because they definitely were strongly pushing me toward one particular program. And I was lucky enough to be strong enough. I'm a principal at a high school. So I was like, no. Just no, you can stop now. But I'm lucky I know my rights and I know, what they can and can't do. And I know not everyone has that knowledge base. So no, you need to talk to other parents. I was lucky to also get with groups like this and PEP, Parents Encouraging Parents. Groups like, find every group you can and ask other parents because they'll tell you all the pain they went through while they were trying to find the right place. So I was lucky I had those resources. We're going to stick with our transition program if we can figure out transportation. So, but yeah, I know a little bit about all those things.
Thank you, CJ. Very helpful. Love that. Lastly, Sandy.
Good morning, everybody. I think I'll start with my family. I have Ryan, who is my child with an intellectual disability, and he is 31. And my second son, Casey, is 26. And I've probably kind of backdoored the system because even though he has an intellectual disability, he's pretty high functioning from adaptive skills. And so we kind of really thought as a family that we would be able to get him set up and do some things without developmental pathways. And he was on the wait list for many years because he was able to work. He works a 40-hour work week. And really and truly, we discovered quickly that we needed to get him more independent and not so dependent on us. And so Jenny kind of pushed me to not procrastinate, and I needed that as a parent. So we started with the state SLS waiver because we did not have to worry about the $2,000. Then we got on Medicaid, and now we're transitioning into the SLS waiver. He has a job coach. He has someone who does homemaker for him and mentors him and takes him into the community. He is his own guardian. He proposed to his girlfriend in December, and we are having a wedding in June of 22. And they are hoping to live at Trailhead Communities because they've put in an application there, which is a co-op housing community for adults with disabilities and young professionals and seniors. I am a person who will not make a move without probably doing more research than I should. And what I mean by that is that Not only have I done all the things that they're talking about as far as using parents, but I changed a career and have been a special educator for many years in both Douglas County and Cherry Creek. And I worked for a day program for a couple of years because I refused to make decisions without having the knowledge. So, you know, I guess that's us.
That's fantastic, Sandy. I love all the different perspectives you guys are bringing, but where we see some overlap too. You know, I love that. All right, we're going to move on to questions from attendees, and I'll shoot it over to Dre for any of the questions.
Yeah, first question came in is, how does this all work if you are a parent CNA? And I don't know if I'm being redundant, but I don't know how I'm supposed to choose between the two adult waivers if I only have info on one of them.
Do you want me to raise my hand? Do you want me to talk?
Yes, if you want to.
Yeah, sorry, these aren't directed at anyone in particular.
I know. I am a parent CNA for Christopher on the SLS waiver. And I have heard that if you are on the DD waiver, you receive more money as a family caregiver. I am not able to do that on the SLS waiver, I think, right? So that's how I've seen people figure it out.
I'm looking to our panelists to see if anyone wants to jump in there with what Laura was saying. Jill?
In terms of the second part of the question was how to decide between the two adult DD waivers. I don't know, I'm wondering which two waivers you're curious about. The DD waiver has a significant wait list unless you're coming directly off the CES or Children's Extensive Services waiver. So if your child is currently on the CES waiver, yes, DD is an option, and you should definitely get more information before you make that decision because there are significant differences between the two waivers. If your child is not aging out of the CES waiver, then SLS is the only waiver that Developmental Pathways, I believe, can really offer you. There are other waivers that are handled through what are called single entry point. Those are the, let's see, the elderly, blind, and disabled waiver and the mental health waiver, as well as a few others, but those aren't handled by Developmental Pathways and probably aren't relevant right now.
That's correct, Jill.
Thanks, Jill. That was from Wendy. So Wendy, if you had specific waivers in mind, feel free to put those back in the chat.
Yeah.
Another question is, what programs do take young adults who need toileting assistance and diaper changes? Is there a database of programs for that?
Laura.
Yes.
Go ahead.
You know, I think when your child is not toilet trained, most people will take them because we have the more significant behavior aspect in our lives as well. That kind of, the people that take kids with, I say kids, clients, with those behaviors will also take kids with toileting. And really, there's no way to find out unless you email them and ask.
Thanks, Laura. Are there any parent groups you would recommend? And that is also an open question to anyone.
There's a listserv called PADCO, Parents of Adults with Colorado or something, Colorado, Joe would know. Yeah, go ahead.
It's Parents of Adults with Disabilities -CO, which is Colorado. You can look that up and join that as a listserv and get either single messages sent to you via your email, or it'll be I think they still have the daily digest.
I do the digest.
You get the digest. It's a group of parents, as it says, all with adult children with disabilities, so it is pretty relevant to what you're going through with transitions. it's a great place to ask some questions about what kind of services, what agencies people have used. People live throughout the greater Denver area, up through, say, Boulder, maybe Fort Collins, down to Colorado Springs. I don't think there's a whole lot from the Western Slope, which Developmental Pathways doesn't serve. So you're probably not worried about that. Other parent groups.
I don't know of any.
Parent to Parent is the only other listserv that I belong to, because they have a mentoring program. So if you have a child with similar needs or disabilities, then they will connect you with someone, if you're open to that. So then they can share with you some things that they've done.
Right. Laura,
I
what
would
about?
also suggest Parents Encouraging Parents, or PEP.
Yes.
It's paid for through the Colorado Department of Education. They do, right now they're doing virtual conferences for parents, but it used to be in person, where they would pay for you to come down for a weekend and participate with other parents and educators and professionals that are dealing with children with special needs. So Parents Encouraging Parents is a huge one that I would suggest.
The other group I would recommend for anyone living in Arapahoe Douglas is the Arc of Arapahoe Douglas, which is a great, not only an advocacy group, which can help you if you're having issues, but they do also run social programs for young people and adults. And it's a really good way. A lot of the parents are involved in that. It's a great way to meet other parents. Really great staff. Call their main number. I would have to look it up. And you can ask to talk to someone about some resources on their website, which is, I think, the ARC AD, but I could be wrong. They also have links to YouTube videos that go through some of these processes of signing up for different waivers, and they're pretty supportive. So full disclosure, I'm on their board. So that's, I think I'm obligated to make that shout out. So.
Jill, you're right. Even the ARC in Colorado Springs, they, I think the membership's what, like $5, $10, but
it's
with
very
that,
cheap.
Yeah, it's super cheap, and I got 100% support in going through guardianship. Like, I literally got a packet of, these are all the papers, this is the timeline, we will help walk you through it. So that made it less scary. That was a huge support when I was going through the guardianship process.
Yeah.
All right. Another question is, any tips on how to network with other parents, which should be critical, I know, but I'm not doing good at it. Do you do it through your school parents or any other groups such as PPP? How do I connect with those? Thanks.
I think some of us actually all kind of started by joining our school's SEAC. It's an advisory committee in the school district that has administrators and directors, usually from the school district, and parents who are trying to offer assistance or give feedback so that those families have a voice in their school district. I can't say that they are actually a parent group, but by meeting those people, you end up spending time with them outside and really learning how to navigate the systems.
Yes, and we as parents of the Family Support Council, Jill and Sandy and I, we're always happy to connect with you individually. I speak for them, but anytime.
And we can send a list of the different parent groups that you all mentioned. We can send that out in the email that we send to families. There was a question on that, if we could send out all the groups that you guys mentioned, and we can be sure to do that when we send an email out to everyone next week.
Cool.
All right, next question, Dre.
Yeah, does anyone have a most beneficial piece of information or process with the transition? what is the most beneficial piece of the process with transition?
For me,
No.
I will tell you, it would probably be the parents and learning. As I guess as someone who is involved in the school SEAC and as someone who's been involved in this committee, what I have seen, and I've seen it as a teacher as well, is that when people are offering information or things like today, many people do not always attend because they are busy, and we know that because we are busy. And people tend to reach out when they're in crisis mode. I would suggest that you don't wait until you're in crisis mode, because then it's too late. Spend a lot of time getting to know where the people are, getting the questions answered. It's hard to make good decisions when you're in crisis mode. I think I just see it a lot. Any of us would help too. I mean,
Yeah. It's just a lot to figure out, and it just takes time. So don't wait.
I would also say trust yourself. You know your kiddo.
Yeah.
Don't let people tell you this is what we normally do. What normally happens doesn't work for every kid. So trust your instinct and trust what you know is right for your kiddo.
Thanks, CJ. You mentioned something about transportation. There's a question that came in from someone that lives in Castle Rock, and they're trying to find transportation to a day program downtown, but Accessoride doesn't come out to Castle Rock. Is there any other options or ideas?
There are only a few others, because I know also the Metro ride in the Colorado Springs area doesn't go past, I think, Monument. So that wouldn't help Castle Rock. I would say, I'm not sure if the Resource Exchange or Developmental Pathways has reach up there in Castle Rock, but I know that's who I'm going through, at least in the Colorado Springs area, is the Resource Exchange, because they have a list of transporters that are willing to work with adults with disabilities. So definitely find out who has that list of transportation. But unfortunately, it's not a lot. Like my list is literally 3 companies that I'm trying to work it out with. So be flexible and try to work it out as best you can. But yeah, it's hard to work out because there's not a lot. At least in my area, there's not a lot.
since my son works, we've had to deal with issues because as the light rails have opened, the bus routes have closed. And the only luck that we have had has been actually calling RTD. There is a new pilot has just started with Accessicab. We used Accessicab before the pilot, and we got him transportation, but it was not cheap and it was not all covered. But I know things are changing. So by all means, call RTD. See if maybe you could be a part of that pilot and help them figure that out.
I love that, Sandy.
We found nothing.
Oh no.
It's hard. And I think you can also go on, is it CDPHE, when you find the list of services that are provided on the waivers, and scroll and look through them like CJ mentioned. And the list is a handful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would highly encourage working with your case manager to see what options are out there as well.
Yeah.
But transportation, especially in Douglas County and Castle Rock, has been tough, and it's needed from a lot of families. And we're hoping that we can do some more work around that.
Yeah.
I would go, in going back a little bit to what is the best advice I think I can give someone is, while your case manager can put out a request for proposal or RFP and ask for responses, don't only rely on those responses coming in. It's one of the reasons why knowing other parents is just critical. I'm helping someone right now who I'm about to reach out to some of these people who are on here to say, what PASAs have you used for this service and that service? Because, you know, they may have used those agencies, they may know more about them. A lot of agencies do not actually respond to RFPs because they rely on word of mouth. And that's just the reality of it. So don't give up hope if you don't get a response to your RFP that is suitable. It means you need to do some more networking.
And you can email all of them yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Yes, they were just wondering, and I don't know if you saw that in the Q&A, would the parent panelists be willing to provide their email addresses that DP could email to us? Would you all be comfortable with that?
Sure.
Definitely.
Put you on the spot.
Yeah.
Thank you for
That's why we're here.
that. So appreciate it. Any other questions? These are great questions.
Do one more, Jenny? What do you
Yes, that sounds great.
think? What questions do you wish you have asked at the start of the transition process?
What was the question?
Oh, sorry, I did not unmute. What questions do you wish you had asked at the start of your transition process?
Oh,
Wow.
I don't know.
You know, it's really hard to say. I think everybody's in such an individual situation. Oh boy, first advice is to make sure you have, as CJ mentioned, medical power of attorney for your child, because if you don't have it and your child needs to go see a doctor, or you have an insurance issue, or the hospital, they don't have to talk to you. So having at least the medical power of attorney is fast, although technically, well, I won't get into that. It took us 4 years to get around to the guardianship, because I was terrified of taking my son into the courthouse, because he doesn't like to be talked to. He doesn't like to be touched. He probably wouldn't go through the metal scanner. And I had visions of him getting tased in the courthouse. So, hey, you can get it waived. You don't have to take your son into the courthouse if your doctor or psychiatrist will sign a note. So that was a big thing that I could have done 4 years earlier if I had known that. So that's one piece of advice. Just reach out when you have questions. Find somebody, case managers or parent support groups, or Special Olympics is, if your child isn't at all interested in sports, you meet parents that way. But ask your questions as soon as they come up. Yeah, don't wait.
Jill, I think I'll reiterate that too, because you guys, I waited for a really long time before we started this, and it was really because I thought that Ryan would not qualify, even though in my mind I really knew. And because I didn't ask the questions, I never got them answered. Once I finally started asking the questions, everybody at DP was great about saying, I don't know that, but I know somebody who does. And they connected me with the person who oversaw Medicaid, or the person who worked directly with SSI. So everybody knew somebody. So ask the questions.
Okay, we just had 2 more questions pop in, if you guys are willing. I know we're a little over on time, but these are great questions. You guys are so popular.
Well, I can share about the bridge program since Ryan went through that. So each school district calls their transition program from 18 to 21 by a different name. Some call them transition. Douglas County has chosen to call theirs bridge. So when you leave from your high school and go into the transition program in Douglas County from 18 to 21, you go to their bridge program. And they have, I think, like 3 different levels, just like many of the school districts do.
Ours is transition.
Sorry. We have some questions popping up about guardianship, a lot of guardianship.
Yes, there's 5.
Do you think a guardianship is a must rather than just GPAs?
It depends on your kid. You know, Christopher is nonverbal and has no idea, because of his cognitive level, how to make a decision for him. So guardianship for us was a must. And we did just Google and, like Jill said, and find a medical power of attorney form. And we had him sign it, which for us was hand over hand because he's not willing, he can't sign either. But that helped us until we got guardianship in place. And then you need to carry a copy of your guardianship paper with you, or keep one in the car just to have it available, or have a picture on your phone, I think, as well. And we did not use an attorney. I'll just add that in. You don't need an attorney in Colorado to do it, so don't pay somebody. There's also a place called Guardianship Alliance, and there is a person in Arapahoe County that is kind of in charge. I don't know if he's an attorney or something, and you can also call him, or he was a him when we did it. So, and we didn't get Christopher's done until he was about 19 and a half. So as long as you have that medical power of attorney, then you're good. And just Google it on the internet and find a form.
And Developmental Pathways also offers a training around guardianship. And
oh yeah, you do. I went to it twice.
And they go through, from what I understand, hands-on through the paperwork, through that process. So I think we're doing that about once, maybe twice a year. So look for those invites as well. And I don't know when the next training is. Someone asked, when is that training? I'm not sure offhand. We can include it in the email that we send out to all the attendees after this, if we can find it.
And just so you know, the legislature just passed a law that is going to be revolving around supported decision-making for people with disabilities and IDDs, so that people can get some help. Maybe they don't need overall guardianship. Maybe they just need a medical power of attorney. I think you need to look at your loved one and make that decision. And the courts do take it seriously that you're taking away decision-making power from someone, and it shouldn't be done lightly. It shouldn't be done just because they might make a bad decision, because let's face it, we all make bad decisions. So supported decision-making is going to be something new that's coming up, and I'm sure Developmental Pathways will be looking at those kinds of things too, in the sense of what can they do. That might be something that might be a service coming up, guys, just, you know, out of the top of my head, because not everybody does need guardianship.
To the guardianship thing that I just thought about, based on you saying that, Jill, too, is that as a parent, they, meaning Developmental Pathways, will share with you what rights the consumers have. And when I worked for a day program, I found that there were people who were guardians that, because they were the parents, thought that they had specific rights for information or decision making. There are things that they cannot do in a day program because of those rights, even if you have guardianship. So you need, I think that was a hard one for some parents to understand, you know. I'll give an example. Someone kissed someone else, and you know, the parent wanted to know why they didn't know about it. They get to kiss somebody just like everybody else in the world.
Right. Right. All right. If there are any additional questions, feel free to send an email to us. Otherwise, I think we're going to wrap up. I want to be mindful of everyone's time and just thank you so much, parent panel. This is so helpful. You can see the need for others to connect with parents. I mean, so thank you so much, because we really appreciate you giving some of that insight to other families going through this process. So with that, this concludes our virtual transition workshop. Thank you all so much for attending this recorded presentation and the PowerPoints, and we'll send information on the different parent groups, and we'll send information on our next guardianship training. All of that will be in the email sent to all attendees using the email that you registered with. We will send that out. We will also send that link to try to win a prize. So look for that. And also we'll be sending out a survey so that you can tell us what you thought of this event and how everyone did. So with that, I thank you so much to all the presenters, the parent panel, and everyone for giving up time on this beautiful Saturday morning to spend with us and learn about transition services. So thank you so much, everyone. And with that, I say goodbye. Thank you.